Chapter 514. Now that the matter with the live after 500 years had been resolved, Nanfeng felt a lot more at ease. There was nothing else urgent, so he reported the work he had done over the past few days to Feng Zhao and brought up the matter of buying land. When it came to buying land, Nanfeng showered Feng Zhao with a wave of bootlicking. He praised Feng Zhao for his foresight and for not being fooled by the small profits before him. If he hadn't made a move before, wouldn't he be able to build a bigger collection now? Now, Nanfeng understood. He just had to follow Feng Zhao's instructions. Feng Zhao was more sensitive than him when it came to high-level news. Under Yan Biao's and Zuyu's gazes, Nanfeng finished his report and turned to other matters. Boss, wasn't this lockbox stored in the warehouse previously? Why are you taking it out to store things now? But I heard that these lockboxes can't be bound to personal terminals or be located. Even if it's pried open, we won't know immediately. It'll be hard to retrieve it if it's lost. Nanfeng meant that these lockboxes weren't secure enough to store valuables. Feng Zhao nodded in understanding. Nanfeng didn't say anything else, but he felt that curly hair's sobs were getting louder. Nanfeng saw that Feng Zhao didn't have anything else to say and didn't take up any more of his time. Feng Zhao still had to deal with the game matters. This incident had caused quite a stir, especially in the esports circles. It was like a tornado had struck and refreshed the knowledge of many people. Thus, #CrazyPointSweepingDemon2.0 became the topic of the year in the esports circles. Nanfeng walked over to curly hair as he lamented his boss's ability to stir up trouble. Nanfeng only had time to console curly hair after his work was done. He still felt heartache for this priceless treasure. He stroked curly hair's head and carefully wiped curly hair's tears with a tissue. As he wiped, he consoled curly hair. Did you get into trouble again? That's right. Even though Nanfeng felt that boss was abusing dogs again, he still had a strong desire to live within boss hearing range. Within this scope, everything the boss did was correct. He was the one who paid the most. Thus, curly hair could only suffer. Nanfeng had only just finished speaking when curly hair started to whimper and cry pitifully. Nanfeng hurriedly wiped his tears with a tissue. Hey, don't cry, don't cry. Curly hair, don't cry. Does it hurt anywhere? Nanfeng took a closer look and didn't see where curly hair was injured. Although he was crying miserably, his posture was rather standard. Yan Biao and Zuyu also didn't seem worried, so Nanfeng relaxed. It was fine as long as he was fine. As for crying, he just needed to comfort her a little. Curly hair continued to cry and ignored Nanfeng's consolation. Firstly, he was sad that his treasures had been taken back by Feng Zhao, and he could no longer play with them. The second was getting beaten up. This was the first time he had received such a beating. Was this what it felt like to be beaten? Every strike was as painful as cutting flesh. Of course, curly hair still didn't know why his body didn't feel much pain. He didn't understand what it meant to be hit on the body, but hurt in the heart. In order to let curly hair remember this lesson, Feng Zhao had directed curly hair's attention to his emotions. Physical sensations were secondary. Besides having his treasures taken back and getting beaten up, curly hair was crying so miserably because of homework and exams. Feng Zhao meant that since curly hair could play games for 12 hours straight, he must be too free. Hence, he doubled the number of online classes, increased the amount of homework, and updated the question bank. From a quiz every 3 days to a quiz every day, there would be 3 major exams every week. Also, since he had come up with the topic of the year, he should write an essay on the topic of the year. An 8,000-word essay would be submitted within a week. Thus, after curly hair faced the wall, he had to attend classes, do homework, take exams, write a self-reflection essay. His whole body ached when he thought about this, and he started crying. No matter how much Nanfeng consoled him, it was useless. After all, Nanfeng couldn't help him with his homework. Until dog ears caught a phrase, make amends for mistakes. He understood this phrase. He had been tested on it a few days ago. Nanfeng continued to speak. Boss will be happy if curly hair makes a contribution. There will even be rewards. For example, catch a thief. Bite hard. especially those who take photos secretly. Bite first. In Nanfeng's opinion, curly hair had been vaccinated for rabies. This was private property, so he was in the right. Those people deserved to be bitten. Most reporters who took photos secretly wouldn't dare to do anything to a meritorious dog. Bite one when you find one. Bite two when you see two. Bite as many as you can. I will take responsibility if anything happens.
So, what if you get bitten? Such a small dog.
What can you do if you get bitten? Yen Biao and Zuiyu. Fuck. Don't instill such frightening thoughts in him. Do you know how big his bite is? He can even eat mechas. If anything happens, you will take responsibility. Can you take responsibility? Nanfeng, who was immersed in his own thoughts, simply didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his words. He continued speaking. Of course, if you encounter someone you can't handle, bark a little and run. Your life is number one. Curly hair. Intruders that could evade the island's security system were definitely very powerful. Curly hair was just a small dog. If he really encountered uninvited intruders, barking a little was enough to fulfill his duty. This was a meritorious dog. How precious was it? A priceless treasure. Losing even a strand of hair would hurt him. He couldn't really count on curly hair to guard the house. In the future, curly hair could just be a mascot. Boss has such high expectations for him. What's the point? Nanfeng muttered to himself, sighing 3 times with each sentence. Curly hair, who only listened to the words make up for his mistakes, had a flash of understanding in his eyes. When Nanfeng finished speaking, he saw that curly hair had finally stopped crying. He smiled in satisfaction, but when he turned to Yen Biao and Zuiyu, he revealed a dissatisfied expression. Sigh, when I'm not around, you guys should spend more time with curly hair. Boss is busy with work. We can't do much, but we can still take care of the dog. Besides walking him, you should also spend more time talking to him. Dogs need companionship. Yen Biao and Zuiyu. Their faces were numb. We look forward to the day you discover his true colors, my dear comrade. We hope that when that happens, you will still be able to say the same thing. The day after the topic of point-sweeping Demon 2.0 ignited a storm in the esports circles, Feng Zhao and Silver Wing issued an explanation. This wasn't a special tactic of Silver Wing, but Feng Zhao's own actions. Furthermore, Feng Zhao publicly announced that he wouldn't give up on music and wouldn't log into this gaming account for a month. Although this was explained, not everyone believed it. He's leaving after acting cool? After this incident, Feng Zhao's godly position has been stabilized. No one can shake it. Everyone who experienced this incident will remember him. I have a feeling that Feng Zhao is playing a very big game of chess. Not necessarily. Feng Zhao might just be looking for inspiration and going online to gather material. Artists like them are also very crazy. Or maybe he's just venting his stress by playing games. Really not playing anymore? How about playing for another 2 days? I just started playing this game. I still plan to go and worship the gods. Yanbei Retirement Facility. Great-grandfather Feng smiled in relief when he saw Feng Zhao's new status. If he had to choose between music and esports, great-grandfather Feng would naturally lean towards the former. He felt that music artists were more superior. In most people's minds, esports wasn't considered an art form. Of course, if Feng Zhao chose to give up music and re-enter the esports circle, great-grandfather Feng would also raise both hands in support. Before Feng Zhao's announcement was made, some people in the family chat group had said that Feng Zhao was addicted to gaming while making music, simply not doing proper work. Great-grandfather Feng saw this and immediately retorted. Little Zhao has a wide range of interests and is multi-talented. Some people weren't happy. What? Our kid doesn't do his homework and plays games, and you say he's not doing proper work. How can Feng Zhao playing games while making music be multi-talented? This is called double standards. This is called favoritism. Great-grandfather Feng didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. When questioned, he still replied confidently. How can this be compared? Your kid doesn't do a single word of homework and secretly plays games. When has he ever passed his exams? Look at little Zhao. Isn't his music work done well? Which one isn't a masterpiece? Which one isn't being fought over by people at a high price? Playing games while making good music, who can say he's in the wrong? Of course, great-grandfather Fong didn't deny that he was biased. No, this is called human nature. How normal is this? Isn't it just favoritism? What's so strange about it? Everyone is biased. After Fong Zhao had become the ambassador of the Outer Space Immigration Project, great-grandfather Fong had specially called his other descendants over to give them a beating so that they wouldn't drag Fong Zhao down. When it comes to outer space immigration, don't look for Fong Zhao. If you have any difficulties, solve them yourself. After all, it's still at the application stage. Whether you want to immigrate or set up a business in a second home, this old man doesn't care. If you can do it, go ahead, but don't go down the wrong path. If anyone uses Fong Zhao as an ambassador to do anything that violates the rules, acts underhandedly, or seeks personal gain, I'm sorry, but as an elder, I have to uphold justice before family. Now, everyone in the Fong family knew that this old man was boundlessly biased and stubborn. If there were any difficulties in life or career, they could still seek help from great-grandfather Fong, but as for anything else, they couldn't hope for much. The people in the retirement facility could most deeply understand great-grandfather Fong's favoritism. After Fong Zhao and Silver Wing's statement came out, great-grandfather Fong became active again in the retirement facility's chat group. First, he gave an impassioned speech, spittle flying as he expressed his opinion. In translation, attention everyone in the retirement facility. I'm going to start showing off now. Chapter 5:15. Great-grandfather Fong began his days of showing off his great-grandson. Every day, the first thing he would think of when he woke up was how to change his posture and show off without leaving a trace. Fong Zhao didn't know about all that. Due to great-grandfather Fong's repeated warnings, the number of people in the Fong family who approached Fong Zhao had decreased. After rejecting another batch of business collaborations, Fong Zhao settled the matter with curly hair and focused all his energy on the music draft. The producers contacted Fong Zhao after seeing the commotion online. Knowing that Fong Zhao's composition was going smoothly, they didn't say much on account of great-grandfather Mo. Before curly hair had stirred up trouble, the music draft was more or less complete. Now, it was just some follow-up edits. After completing the music draft, Fong Zhao sent it to the producers. After settling official matters, Fong Zhao looked at his surroundings. Although most of his attention had been on the music draft, Fong Zhao had also paid some attention to curly hair. Homework and exams definitely had to be checked. Fortunately, curly hair had become much more well-behaved after the beating. He knew that he had to perform well to get his gaming console and personal terminal back. Recently, he had been using the learning console a lot more. However, what Fong Zhao didn't know was that curly hair's usage of the learning console wasn't all for the sake of reading lessons. In order to reduce his homework and exams and get his gaming console and personal terminal back, curly hair had decided to make up for his mistakes. However, there hadn't been any intruders on the island recently, so he couldn't bite. He couldn't do much in terms of defense, so he could only start from other areas. Thus, during his rare walk, curly hair didn't behave atrociously or tease the underwater animals. He was searching for treasure. As an experienced and knowledgeable dog, curly hair started searching for valuables at the bottom of the sea. He even specially searched for information related to underwater treasures on the learning console. His personal terminal had been confiscated, so he couldn't search online. The information the learning console could find was limited. Most of it was research papers and magazine articles. Curly hair overheard Fong Zhao and Nanfeng's conversation about building a collection and buying land. Buying land and building a house required a lot of money. Curly hair wanted to reduce Fong Zhao's burden and prove that even though he ate a lot and caused trouble, he could still earn money. If Fong Zhao could earn a large sum of money, would he ask for the game console and terminal sealed in the password-protected case in advance? Curly hair was so excited at the thought of getting his gaming console and personal terminal back. On this day, Yan Biao was driving a speedboat and watched the dog swim away after jumping into the sea. There was no indication on the radar, and he couldn't locate it.
He was used to it.
He turned on the recorder to record today's dog walking work and practiced his marksmanship with his gun. As a bodyguard, he could not slack off for even a moment. On the island, Zhuyu was patrolling the island in his patrol car. As the sun gradually set, Zhuyu looked at the time. Today, Yan Biao walked the dog a little longer. Usually, it would be back by this time. Just as he was about to send a message to Yan Biao to ask about it, he noticed that there was something rapidly approaching him underwater. Zhuyu smiled. Not long after, curly hair shot ashore from the sea and ran into the residential building like the wind. He seemed to be holding something in his mouth, but they couldn't see it clearly. Yan Biao couldn't catch up with them even though he was driving the speedboat. He was late by more than 10 minutes before returning to the island. "What's going on? Did you get dumped by that dog again?" Zhuyu asked. Didn't boss tell him to come back on the speedboat and not swim by himself? Yan Biao's mind was also full of questions. I don't know what he discovered today, but he didn't listen to my commands. He swam back to the island after walking himself. I don't know what he's holding in his mouth. He ran off in such a hurry to claim credit with that thing in his mouth. So you guessed. Inside the house, curly hair rushed straight into the building after returning and ran to Feng Zhao with a bowl-shaped object in his mouth. This. I found it at the bottom of the sea. Feng Zhao's eyebrows jumped up when he saw what curly hair was holding in his mouth. Porcelain. The period of destruction that had lasted for 100 years had almost completely destroyed porcelain and other fragile cultural relics. Compared to metal objects, porcelain was too fragile. During that period, people were busy trying to survive and didn't even care about gold, silver, and jewelry, let alone porcelain. According to what Feng Zhao knew, there had indeed been people who had specially hidden porcelain relics during the period of destruction, but very few had been preserved. Technology had developed rapidly in the new era, and new materials had been produced batch after batch. Everyday utensils were cheap and practical, and porcelain had gradually withdrawn from the market. True ceramic craftsmen could be counted on one hand. However, these craftsmen had been created by hobbyists after the founding era based on preserved historical materials. Traditional handicraft techniques from the old era and even earlier had already been lost. New era ceramics were mostly produced by intelligent machinery. Even more high-end custom-made ceramics were made by craftsmen and belonged to the ceramic arts of the new era. Generally speaking, in the current market, ceramics belong to the minority of the minority. Apart from those who were particularly particular about it, other people basically didn't use porcelain. Feng Zhao took the porcelain and asked, "Was it fished up from the bottom of the sea?" "Yes. I found a lot of it at the bottom of the sea. A small boat was buried there. I dug this out. See if it's worth any money." Curly hair wagged his tail to claim credit. Feng Zhao's attention paused on a small boat and didn't comment. Then he thought of something else. At the beginning of the new era, there was still a requirement to hand over artifacts from the bottom of the sea. Later on, as attention shifted to outer space, the relevant laws on salvaging artifacts were changed. Now, things from the bottom of the sea belonged to whoever fished them out. However, the attention of merchants gradually shifted outwards, and the bottom of the sea was gradually forgotten. Only those especially dedicated cultural relic collectors still kept their eyes on the bottom of the sea. It was just that the difficulty of detecting and the cost of salvaging artifacts gradually made them give up. This thing is too fragile. I only managed to bring one back after biting through a few. I didn't even dare to swim fast. Curly hair wagged his tail as he continued to boast. He had already checked on the learning console. This sort of fragile toy was very expensive. The older it was, the more expensive it was. Feng Zhao rubbed curly hair's head and picked up the bowl for a closer look. There were a few teeth marks and cracks on the bowl from a dog's bite. Curly hair had been very careful, but he still couldn't avoid these injuries. However, this degree of completeness was already rather rare for curly hair. The bowl was covered in the remains of marine organisms. Feng Zhao went online to search for cleaning methods and did a simple cleaning first. The sediment on the surface of the porcelain bowl was washed away, revealing the body of the bowl. Although there were some damages, One could still see the elegant beauty of the bowl, as well as that reserved and warm aura that came from the vicissitudes of time. Feng Zhao didn't know much about porcelain and had no way of determining which period this bowl belonged to. When he had excavated the Poseidon Soar the last time, Feng Zhao had prepared 2 appraisal instruments on the island. It just so happened that they were put to use now. Feng Zhao stared blankly for quite a while as he stared at the data displayed on the 2 appraisal instruments. More than 1,600 years. This bowl had been made at least 1,600 years ago. Curly Hair grinned as he stared at the data displayed on the appraisal instruments. He wagged his tail happily. This piece of trash is more than 1,600 years old. It should be old enough. Who knows how long it would take to exchange for a game console and terminal. Chapter 516. Curly Hair was full of anticipation for the porcelain and expressed his willingness to fish them up. Of course, Feng Zhao wouldn't let Curly Hair do it. It would be a pity if he let this dog fish up the porcelain. It would be better to find a professional to do the salvage work. Nanfeng had rushed back to the island the moment he received Feng Zhao's message. Even now, he still couldn't believe it. Those were porcelain from 1,600 years ago. Porcelain from a few decades before the period of destruction could be sold for quite a bit. Porcelain from 1,000 years ago might not even be available in local museums. The Yenzhou Museum did have 2 intact pieces, but they were small pieces. Nanfeng's trembling hands took the porcelain bowl from Feng Zhao. Looking at the holes and cracks on the bowl, Nanfeng's lips trembled with heartache. All the damage was worth money. Boss, are there really sunken ships and large amounts of porcelain here? Nanfeng swallowed his saliva as he stared unblinkingly at the location Feng Zhao had marked on the map. That's what we know now. Feng Zhao flipped through the photos he had taken. These had all been taken by Curly Hair at the bottom of the sea. Nanfeng couldn't care less about those damaged porcelain pieces. Fish them up. We have to fish them up. That isn't private property. Whoever fishes them up first gets to keep them. Boss, we have to hurry. Are there any reliable and professional salvage teams? Feng Zhao had done some research. There were too few capable and reliable salvage teams. However, he planned to invite those large museums. Those people had a lot of connections and treasured cultural relics. Feng Zhao flipped open his contact list and prepared to contact someone. At this moment, a new notification popped up. It was a message asking Feng Zhao if it was convenient to make a call. Feng Zhao raised an eyebrow. The Interplanetary Fund's head, Yu Hua. If it wasn't anything important, this head wouldn't contact him directly. The last time the warp engine had been officially used, it had only been through a text message. You guys discuss outside first. I'll go inside to take a call. Feng Zhao entered the house after speaking to Yan Biao and the others. Nanfeng was still immersed in the huge impact of the treasure. He mumbled to himself and scrolled through the internet. Then who do we contact? Which salvage company is the most professional? They won't steal in secret, right? As Nanfeng spoke, his mind didn't stop thinking. He thought about the salvage company again. Who would he look for to cooperate with after the items were salvaged? Should he choose the Bryan Museum, the #1 collector in the world? Or the Huangzhou Museum? Both of them were good at business and had strong capital. Why not ask both sides? Or should he contact the auction house? Nanfeng wanted to ask Feng Zhao what his plans were, but he realized Feng Zhao wasn't around. Where's the boss? Nanfeng asked. He went to answer the phone. Yan Biao gestured towards the house with his mouth. It's been more than 20 minutes. Did you just notice? When the phone rang, it's going to take a while. Nanfeng was anxious to discuss the treasures buried in the sea. After waiting for another 10 minutes, Feng Zhao came out of the house. Boss, are you interested in finding a salvage team? Nanfeng asked. I have already contacted them. They've already set off and will be here very soon, Feng Zhao replied. Ah, so fast? Which company? Nanfeng asked. Interplanetary Fund. Nanfeng and the other two. The Interplanetary Fund accepted such business? The three of them were deeply puzzled. However, When they saw the fleet approaching from afar, their puzzlement didn't disappear. Instead, it deepened. Is that the engineering fleet boss hired? Why does it look so imposing? Zhuoyu said as he gazed at the sea. That's the Interplanetary Fund's logo. It's really the Interplanetary Fund. Nanfeng lowered his voice. They can even enter the extraterrestrial battlefield. Are they really here to salvage the sunken ship, not to attack the island? Yen Biao was in a daze. Not just anyone can hire a team of the Interplanetary Fund's caliber. The last time I saw a similar type of crane, it was salvaging a warship. Nanfeng's heart skipped a beat. Awesome. This wasn't something that could be hired just by throwing money. It felt like they had hired a war machine to catch fish. It didn't match their temperament. Or maybe boss hired them not only to salvage the ship, but also to provide security. It's not easy to protect that ship of treasures. Thinking about it this way, it made sense. As expected of boss, he had considered everything thoroughly. Back when the Poseidon Soar had been unearthed, many people had stirred up trouble in the dark. The commotion this time would surely be even greater. There would be no lack of trouble. Having such powerful external help was a good thing. Nanfeng looked around. Seeing that Feng Zhao wasn't around, he whispered, "Do you guys think that boss really has some impressive background? Otherwise, why would the Interplanetary Fund agree to help salvage the ship? Or perhaps there is some unknown exchange of benefits involved. But given the Interplanetary Fund's wealth and status, they wouldn't make an exception for these relics, right?" Of course, he was only saying this in private. It was impossible to ask in person. Regardless of whether they were assistants or bodyguards, all they needed to do was follow boss's instructions. They couldn't be too curious. Who cares? It's fine as long as we can salvage it. In any case, boss won't sell his body. Casting aside these doubts, Nanfeng's excitement and joy surged once again. Meanwhile, Yen Biao and Zhuoyu's eyes flickered. They did have some thoughts, but they didn't dare voice them. What they had seen on Planet In couldn't be told to Nanfeng. After the Interplanetary Fund salvage team arrived, they didn't exchange any pleasantries. After understanding the general situation from Feng Zhao, they began their efficient salvage work. Not to mention porcelain, even a rotten piece of wood from the ship's hull had great research value. The salvage team used a special box to seal the entire shipwreck before scooping it up. Nanfeng clutched his chest and sighed. So many relics. Too exciting. From the Poseidon Soar to this treasure ship, I have experienced so many things. I feel that I will be able to remain calm in the face of danger. Yen Biao and Zhuoyu glanced at him with complicated expressions.
Sigh.
It's good to be ignorant. Inside the house, Feng Zhao took photos and videos, compiled an email, selected a few partners, and sent it out. He didn't intend to monopolize all the items he had scooped up. The partners he had chosen this time were those he had been satisfied with during the exhibition of the Poseidon Soar skeleton. Feng Zhao didn't invite any of those that weren't satisfied or tried to play tricks. Yenzhou Museum. The curator nearly fainted from excitement when he received the email. The gold and silver from the shipwreck were tossed aside. Porcelain. The Yenzhou Museum's curator's heart trembled. Their museum also had porcelain from 1,000 years ago on display, and there were only 2 complete pieces left after the period of destruction. They were also cultural relics that were prohibited from being exhibited outside. Only their Yenzhou Museum had them. Now, hearing that Feng Zhao had scooped up more than 1,600 years old porcelain, and it was tens of thousands of pieces, how could he not be excited? He took 2 deep breaths and hurriedly popped a pill into his mouth.
Calm down.
I have to be rational. I still can't calm down. Is that just porcelain? That's civilization. Treasures left behind by the world. Treasures that have survived. Last time, the Poseidon Soar hadn't been the first to be displayed. They had admitted that they weren't as capable as Huangzhou Museum, but this time, they could do it. Previously, in order to successfully exhibit the Poseidon Soar, Yenzhou Museum had greatly increased its capabilities. This time, the pressure was even greater. However, they were confident. This time, they had to be the first to collaborate with Feng Zhao. While Yenzhou Museum was making its move, Other parties that had received the email also made their move. World-class ceramic artists who had heard the news were all shocked. Their fanatical gazes were focused on the old era. Even after so much time had passed, even after entering the era of outer space immigration, people still held a complex attachment and passion for the old era. These fragile cultural relics that had survived for more than 1,000 years were both unfortunate and fortunate. Although they had fallen into a deep slumber at the bottom of the sea, they had luckily escaped the destruction of the period of destruction. This was enough to trigger a frenzy in the collecting world. Media outlets with a keen sense of smell also made their move. Although they had yet to conduct a full appraisal and had yet to see the real thing, the Bryan family, the #1 collector family in the world, had made a rough estimate based on the photos. Based on the current market price, these items were worth at least $100 billion. They had immense collection value. Various media outlets that had received this news had mixed feelings. Some were excited that they had discovered big news, but there was also envy, jealousy, and hatred. Back when Feng Zhao had discovered the Alcade, he had donated the tens of billions he had received as a reward. How long had it been? And now his net worth had risen to $100 billion. Envy was envy, but news still had to be published. Traffic also had to be fought for. Thus, reporters who had caught wind of the news started a new round of news bombardment. Topics like crazy point-sweeping demon, image ambassador, and the like were completely suppressed. Topics that had popped up out of nowhere dominated the headlines, and the hottest topic of the day was #FengZhao, the man who got rich overnight once again, #. Chapter 517. Feng Zhao's island became lively once again. Experts from various continents had gathered. Some teams had already started to clean up the salvaged porcelain. Of course, there were also experts who suggested not cleaning too thoroughly. Those were traces of history and could increase the value of the porcelain itself. The loss of culture was too serious. There was a large gap in cultural relics. To them, Feng Zhao's newly salvaged porcelain was simply priceless. There is too much damage. The people in charge of cleaning these relics were distressed. Although there were tens of thousands of pieces, only about 100 were truly intact. This was already quite fortunate. Some of the porcelain had been damaged due to various reasons at the bottom of the sea, while others had been damaged during the salvage process. Of course, the Interplanetary Fund's salvage team had already done their best to minimize such damage. However, even damaged and shattered porcelain still had research value. In this era, where ancient relics were scarce, every fragment had to be preserved. The people from the various continents had come with a mission. They all had their own ideas about this batch of porcelain and hoped to collaborate with Feng Zhao. This was not the first time they had come in contact. Everyone was very satisfied with the collaboration with the Poseidonsaur. They also had a deeper understanding of Feng Zhao's character. According to their original assumptions, since Feng Zhao had called them over, it meant that he had the intention to collaborate. However, no matter how they guessed, they had never imagined that Feng Zhao would donate. Really donate? The Yenzhou Museum curator nearly bit his tongue as he spoke too hastily. The curator of the Lajou Museum, who was sitting at the side with the reserved air of an aristocrat, knocked his teeth against his cup with a crisp ding. The curators of the various continents and representatives of various private museums all stared at Feng Zhao fervently. The curator of the Bryan Museum, the #1 collector in the world, was also extremely excited. He tried his best to suppress the impatience in his heart. Have you thought it through? This is an ancient artifact worth hundreds of billions. Feng Zhao nodded. Yes.
Oh.
This is a really great decision. Please accept our Bryan Museum's most sincere gratitude. This is of great significance to our museum. On behalf of the Bryan Museum, I guarantee that these historical treasures will receive the most appropriate care. The Bryan Museum's exaggerated tone brought the others back to their senses. They immediately expressed their gratitude to Feng Zhao. Another wave of flowery praise. Of course, Feng Zhao didn't make the donation unconditionally. He made some requests regarding the maintenance, follow-up research, and display of the cultural relics. However, these were not difficult requests for the various curators. Since Feng Zhao was willing to donate such precious cultural relics, they were naturally willing to show their generosity. Even when Feng Zhao had brought up the topic of applying for land to build a private collection hall, the various curators had taken the initiative to express their willingness to help. It was not easy to apply for land for a private collection hall. With the help of the curators, it would be easier to pass the examination. Feng Zhao's decision to donate was not just because of the private collection hall. In comparison, the private collection hall was a small matter. Even without the help of the various curators, he could still settle it. It was just that he would need a little more time. His real decision to donate was also for the good of this batch of porcelain. With so many pieces of porcelain, it was impossible for him to keep them all. He was not a collector. In the future, he would focus his energy on music. In terms of the maintenance of cultural relics as a layman, he was definitely not as good as professionals. Even if he hired a professional team to do the maintenance project, the amount of work would be too large, and there would always be areas that could not be taken care of. The museums of the various continents and some private museums would definitely value these historical treasures. These were treasures that belonged to all of humanity. These were treasures that had once propelled human civilization forward. These relics that had survived the period of destruction 100 years ago could only be put to good use if their historical value was fully displayed to the people of the 12 continents. In the future, even if more and more people migrated to outer space, they would still be able to remember these objects that had reflected resplendent light in human history. After more detailed discussions, the cultural relics were shipped to the various continents. After the appraisal of this batch of salvaged cultural relics, the museums of the 12 continents officially received the cultural relics that Feng Zhao had donated. To show their importance, the governors of the various continents were present at the donation ceremony and personally presented Feng Zhao with a certificate of honor. Related topics once again made headlines in the various continents. Feng Zhao donates again. Unearthing historical treasures, passing on the torch of culture. Feng Zhao donates cultural relics worth 100 billion. Practically everyone who saw this news had very complicated feelings. Previously, when Feng Zhao had donated tens of billions of dollars, many people had called him stupid. Now, they did not know what to say. People who had just been envious of Feng Zhao's overnight riches from salvaging cultural relics nearly popped their eyes out when they saw the news. This just like that? Spectators who had only seen the news felt their hearts ache. This time, it really isn't a show. Who would be willing to use cultural relics worth 100 billion to make a show? Given Feng Zhao's current popularity, there is no need for him to make a show. This extravagance. Even though he doesn't have an entourage of assistants and bodyguards, for a celebrity to receive a certificate of honor from 12 of the continents, he must be the only one in the entertainment circle, right? This level is really not easy to achieve. Great-grandfather Feng was silent for a long time when he saw the news Feng Zhao donates 100 billion cultural relics. He sighed and lamented. He felt that it was a pity, but he felt even more proud. Then, he grinned and saved the photos of Feng Zhao with the governors of the various continents and forwarded them to various chat groups. Look, my little Zhao's awareness is really high. No wonder he can be the ambassador of the Outer Space Immigration Super Project. At this moment, on Feng Zhao's small island, Nanfeng was standing by the seaside and gazing at the sea. He was as stiff as a rock that had weathered the elements. A few days ago, he had been standing here watching people from the various continents' museums transport cultural relics away. Now, he clutched his chest every time he saw the news. The blow he had received this time was really too great. There was no such thing as the most exciting, only more exciting. Even though these cultural relics weren't his, they were tangible and tangible. He had watched 100 billion cultural relics float away from his hands and disappear into the distance. His heart ached. How do you guys think Boss can still maintain such a calm attitude? Just that bowl alone is equivalent to a suite in Huangzhou's Huangqing City. Does he really not have the slightest bit of reluctance? Don't you think it's a pity? Is he addicted to donating? Even if it was to maintain his image as the outer space immigration ambassador, the cost was too high. Nanfeng couldn't understand it, but he didn't dare ask Feng Zhao. All he could do was complain to Yan Biao and Zuiyu. How much of a blow has boss gone through to be able to maintain such a calm attitude? After venting his complicated emotions, Nanfeng turned around and saw that his two colleagues were also calm and collected. Incomprehensible. How can you guys be so calm? Nanfeng scrutinized Yan Biao's expression. You really aren't faking it? Yan Biao opened his mouth. You might not believe it, but I've seen more exciting things. What's more exciting? Say it to provoke me? Nanfeng didn't believe that there was anything more exciting than 100 billion. More exciting than gifting ancient cultural relics. Chapter 5:18. Yan Biao only smiled and said nothing. After seeing a dog that could swallow mechas, talk, and play games, he felt that these things were nothing. Speaking of which, this comrade of his didn't seem to be very resilient. Just a few ancient relics could make him so excited. What would he do when he came across the truth in the future? Yan Biao was a little worried. If Nanfeng discovered that there were more exciting things happening around him in the future, would he be traumatized? Anyway, he was still traumatized by the scare. Yan Biao sighed silently. Just as he was about to say something, Feng Zhao issued a mission in the group chat. Nanfeng didn't have time to feel sad. He had to go to the other continents to deal with the aftermath of the cultural relic donation. Very quickly, he left the island with a flying transport. Yan Biao and Zui walked into the house. Feng Zhao was already waiting there. Follow me. Feng Zhao brought the two of them to an underground warehouse. There were many underground warehouses on the island. Yan Biao and Zuiyu rarely came to this warehouse. However, even though he hadn't been here many times, he could still sense that something had changed the moment he stepped down the stairs. The two of them looked at each other in confusion. When had this place been modified? Especially the warehouse door. At first glance, it looked the same as before, but the minute details could still be seen. The door had been replaced. Moreover, with Yan Biao and Zuiyu's eyesight, they could naturally tell that the newly replaced warehouse door was definitely of a relatively high security level. The boss wanted to hide something in this warehouse? In Zhang Heng's memory, the warehouse wasn't big. It was closer to the owner of the house, so it was a more private area. The last time he was here, it was used to store daily necessities, most of which were for dogs. The word dog was now a sensitive word in Yan Biao and Zuiyu's hearts. No matter how curious they were, they didn't dare to delve into it. As the two of them speculated, the door to the warehouse opened. Seeing the situation inside the door, Yan and Zhuo were shocked. The warehouse that was originally used to store the goods had completely changed. It was like a fully equipped apartment, the kind with the best of the best. A chubby 10-year-old boy was sitting on the sofa, tossing and catching a black ball. Yan Biao and Zuiyu roared in their hearts. Why was this kid here? Isn't this that guy from the Interplanetary Fund? Shouldn't he be on Planet Een? Even if he wasn't on Planet Een, he should have gone to the Interplanetary Fund's territory. What were they doing on Feng Zhao's island? Why was he so secretive and secretive? It was Little Bear who had appeared in the warehouse. He will be here for a period of time. Be careful, Feng Zhao said to Yan and Zhua. Yan Biao and Zuiyu had treated Little Bear as the true crown prince of the Interplanetary Fund. When they heard Feng Zhao's words, all sorts of schemes and plots to seize power, assassinate, and other aristocratic families flashed through their minds. At the same time, he had some doubts in his heart. The Interplanetary Fund's controller didn't trust his trusted aide and actually placed such an important crown prince in Feng Zhao's hands? What was going on? Could it be that there was something he didn't know about gratitude and hatred? Seeing Feng Zhao come over, Little Bear jumped up from the sofa, his face beaming with the joy of meeting his idol. You've come. It's so boring here. Can I go upstairs to play? Little Bear pouted with a childish air. Sure, Curly Hair is here too, Feng Zhao replied. Forget it then. Little Bear returned to the sofa and sat down obediently. Feng Zhao's expression was serious. He will be taking refuge here for a period of time. Don't leak his whereabouts. Yan Biao and Zhuiyu's expressions turned solemn. Yes, indeed, things weren't as simple as they seemed on the surface. No wonder the Interplanetary Fund was willing to help salvage the boat. There really was a deal involved. On the surface, they were salvaging the boat, but in reality, they were escorting the Crown Prince here to take refuge. How many people's eyes had been fooled by this move of his? Now, everyone's attention was attracted by the 100 billion worth of ancient relics. Who would have thought that the salvage team would send a person over? Even if there were people who had suspicions about the configuration of the salvage team, their suspicions would quickly be dispelled by the news of Feng Zhao spending a large sum of money to hire an interplanetary fund fleet to salvage a 1,000-year-old relic. The value of a 1,000-year-old relic was considerable and significant. What was wrong with using a highly configured salvage team? No problem. Even requesting an escort team was reasonable. After understanding the crux of the matter, Yan Biao asked in a low voice, "Then what about Nanfeng's side?" "There's no need to tell him for now," Feng Zhao replied. Nanfeng didn't spend much time on the island. Recently, he had been frequently traveling to various continents because of the relic cooperation. The fewer people who knew, the better. The two nodded. Understood. After letting Yan Biao and Zhuiyu bring Little Bear around to familiarize himself with the place, Feng Zhao went upstairs to call Curly Hair over for a chat. After Feng Zhao left, the atmosphere in the underground warehouse instantly turned cold. The child who had been smiling just a moment ago had turned 180 degrees and completely ignored the two standing there. Yan Biao and Zhuiyu had already seen this child's change in attitude in a second, so they weren't surprised. Zhuiyu tried to strike up a conversation. He forced a smile and said to Little Bear, "Little friend, we meet again. You look a little taller than the last time." Most children like to hear this sort of thing. It wouldn't be wrong to say that Little Bear had grown taller, even though Zhuiyu couldn't tell. However, Little Bear's expression turned even colder.
Oh.
Seeing that Little Bear didn't like this topic, Zhuiyu quickly changed the subject. "You didn't bring bodyguards?" Little Bear was expressionless. This time, he didn't even want to say anything. However, that look of disdain reminded the two of that merciless personal attack. What's the use of a bunch of salted fish? After that, there was only an awkward silence in the warehouse. Giving up on the conversation, the two of them didn't want to have too much contact with this child. If it had been another child who had been thrown here by his family to seek refuge, they might have felt some sympathy. However, if it was Little Bear, he had the skills, a senior engineer on Planetine. He had the wealth, a suspected crown prince of the Interplanetary Fund. These two salted fish weren't fit to sympathize with others. At the same time, in the study upstairs, Feng Zhao called Curly Hair over. "The Interplanetary Fund provided you with some of the energy you need to grow. The power ores you usually munch on are also provided by them. We agreed that we would also need to take action when necessary. This time, we need to protect that child in the basement. Since he had eaten someone else's food, he had to pay some compensation. He couldn't just eat and not work. Although he had donated cultural relics worth 100 billion, honestly speaking, given the way this dog ate, 100 billion really wasn't enough as long as it wasn't illegal. Furthermore, the Interplanetary Fund had also helped cover for him at crucial times. These weren't unconditional. Understand?" Feng Zhao asked. "Understood." Curly Hair replied. He had to protect his snack supplier. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to eat free snacks in the future. No free snacks equals Feng Zhao's diet would make him poor equals risk of being abandoned. Furthermore, Nanfeng had said that he could make up for his crimes with meritorious deeds. If the junk he fished up from the bottom of the sea wasn't enough, he could still make contributions in other areas. Perhaps he could even get Feng Zhao to buy a World Limited Edition game console for him in the future. Curly Hair's unwillingness dissipated after he sorted out his logic. Feng Zhao looked at him silently for a while before saying, "Don't go to the sea during this period. I can return the game console to you first. Looking after the house is my duty." Curly Hair puffed out his chest and assured Feng Zhao with a resolute gaze. As long as he could get the game console back, Not just looking after the house, he could even go straight to the battlefield. Also, there are submarines hidden in the sea near the island. They all belong to the Interplanetary Fund. You know what to do. Then, should I go sniff out the scent of our allies? Curly Hair asked. Feng Zhao thought for a bit before shaking his head. Forget it. Just stay on the island. What if Curly Hair bit the other party, if a conflict arose? Just a bite could cause quite a commotion. To prevent friendly fire, it was safer to restrict Curly Hair's movements. Furthermore, Feng Zhao wasn't sure if those people were trustworthy. It was best if Curly Hair didn't expose himself. The fewer people who knew, the better. He couldn't control the Interplanetary Fund, but he could control Curly Hair for the time being. In any case, this dog would become a complete otaku as long as he had the game console. As long as he had something to eat, he wouldn't be willing to step out of the house. Chapter 519. The salvage team had secretly sent over Little Bear. Feng Zhao had brought along Little Riches, who had curled up into a ball. He hadn't even brought along his two precious mechanical dogs, Gooden and Gozong. After all, they weren't really kids. Even if they were usually a little mischievous, they understood the gravity of the situation and wouldn't do anything to harm others. Feng Zhao was at ease for the time being. After Feng Zhao sent the results of his seclusion to the production team, he answered some of the composing questions they had sent him. At the same time, on the set of Above the Blue Dome of Heaven, the busy music studio didn't have a moment to rest. Although the scale of this series about warp engine engineers couldn't compare to Founding Era, it was still a huge investment compared to other series of the same period. The series had already finished filming and was in the midst of intense post-production. Above the Blue Dome of Heaven was positioned as a premium series, so the details couldn't be sloppy. The opening and closing credits were all composed by professionals, and a music studio had been set up. Feng Zhao sent the compositions he had composed during his seclusion to the relevant person in charge of the music studio. The music studio had also been receiving contributions from composers. They just needed to choose the most suitable piece based on the finished product and accompany it with the music. This sounded simple, but in reality, it wasn't an easy job. Just talking about the soundtrack, from the orchestration to the style, everything had to fit the plot. Premium series were even more particular. For a good series, from the investors to the producer to the director, music was rather important, not to mention a series like Above the Blue Dome of Heaven. For those with rich emotions and sensitivity, the music in the series had a brainwashing effect. It might even be a permanent brainwashing. No matter how many years passed, the moment they heard the music, they would think of certain scenes, certain characters, and certain plots. After Feng Zhao sent the composition over, it immediately caused an intense discussion in the music studio. Hey, this song isn't bad. I told him that we needed a slow, lyrical song. Indeed, Feng Zhao didn't let me down. The person said, as he played the sample. It's like a very historical photo, with a luster that's been dyed by time. Look at the sun and stars, the mountains hidden slow but not sloppy, heavy but not greasy. Every note has a sense of story. Even the opening credits and accompaniment would be fine, especially the accompaniment. When the scene changes and the accompaniment plays, the feeling comes out. It's empathic. It's very immersive. The other person in the room nodded, then shook his head and smiled. He wasn't denying what his colleague had said, but it was just a matter of personal preferences and inclinations. I like the second song in the repertoire better.
Light.
As the train shuttled back and forth, it welcomed the blossoming flowers and the wind, bringing with it a pleasant smile. The wind passed through his fingers, and the sun shone brightly in the carriage. The train was heading towards its dream. Even though it was in the direction of leaving home, there was no sadness or melancholy. Go where you want to go, do what you want to do, the majesty of the cello, the lightness of the acoustic guitar, there was a kind of industrial romantic feeling. It's very compatible with our drama. I personally prefer to use this song as the ending song. We can also rearrange it and add vocals.
No, no, no.
If it's the ending, I'll choose the third song. The person sitting in the corner with headphones was extremely excited. It's true. Listen to it. Hey, team leader, listen to it too. It was simply godly. Tense, refreshing, and any kind of plot could be seamlessly connected. It didn't give people a strange feeling at all. Moreover, it was very pleasant to hear. Fang Zhao's creative ability was too strong. Team leader, did you specially customize an all-purpose ending song when you asked Fang Zhao for a draft? The person who had been silent all this while put down his pen and took off his headphones. He rubbed the goosebumps on his arms and sighed. I didn't customize it. Also, why didn't you guys like the last song, Millennium? In terms of depth and storytelling, which song can compare to it? Let's not talk about the songs in Fang Zhao's repertoire. Just the music manuscripts we received in our hands. Any other song of the same genre would be smashed to the ground. Don't tell me you guys don't have this little bit of appreciation? When these words came out, the other people in the studio had awkward and helpless expressions on their faces. It's not that we don't like it. It's the truth. In my opinion, Fang Zhao's Millennium has already reached the level of a drama's climax. It can totally be used as the theme for the entire drama. But, isn't this, the theme has already been decided. The person who spoke became softer and softer. These people's professional abilities were rather strong. Their appreciation of works was also first-rate in the industry. Even if it wasn't the genre they liked, they definitely had the ability to appreciate it. Not mentioning the Millennium in Fang Zhao's manuscript, it wasn't that they didn't like it, but there was really no other way. It wasn't that Fang Zhao's Millennium wasn't good. It was too good. It was so good that it exceeded expectations. It exceeded the scope of their abilities. The song that had already been chosen as the theme had also been composed by a master-level composer. It was also a high-quality piece. Most importantly, that person had deep qualifications. In the music industry, in terms of seniority and connections, that person was definitely stronger. Although Fang Zhao was a composer of the younger generation, in this industry, he still had to take a step back. The studio's team leader frowned and was silent for a while. Then, he thought of something and softly clicked his tongue. The drama is divided into 2 seasons. Just swap them out. If the first season doesn't make it, we can use Fang Zhao's songs for the second season, the team leader said. According to the original plan, even if the drama was divided into 2 seasons, the theme wouldn't change. However, he really couldn't bear to part with Fang Zhao's Millennium. Fang Zhao's style of work has a sense of history and mission that others can't compare. There are some more complicated things that I can't put my finger on at the moment. I just feel that it's a pity that Millennium isn't used as the theme. The others nodded and smiled. It's good to use it in the second season. Perhaps it will be even more suitable. An idea flashed through the team leader's mind. The pieces that Fang Zhao sent over will surely have a better effect when paired together. I looked at the manuscripts he sent over. A few of them are suitable for adaptation. We can use this theme to create a set of music for the drama. One piece can be used in many ways. This way, we won't use his songs in the first season. We can use other people's works. Fang Zhao's will all be moved to the second season. We can do that. But team leader, whether it's the opening and closing songs or the interludes, the price will have to be calculated separately. Fang Zhao's current net worth is a little expensive. I'm afraid the budget given to us by the production team won't be enough. How about we talk to Fang Zhao about the whole package? The whole package is more cost-effective. The team leader made a call in the cubicle and asked the higher-ups for instructions before returning. Let's talk about the whole package. All right. Can we contact Fang Zhao now? Probably. Even if we can't reach him, he gave us a contact number. I think it's his assistant or manager. Let's contact them first. After getting someone to talk to Fang Zhao about the whole package, the team leader let out a long sigh of relief. A satisfied smile appeared on his face. Although Fang Zhao is young, he won't have any problem carrying a season. It doesn't matter if others have objections. Let his works speak for themselves. Furthermore, Fang Zhao's current global influence transcends boundaries. Comparing popularity, rallying power, and raw strength, he really isn't afraid of anyone. The team leader was full of confidence. Fang Zhao's strength was the basis for his decision. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to talk to the higher-ups about the whole package. He couldn't bear to ruin his own reputation. Lying back in his chair, the team leader's smile slowly faded. His gaze seemed to lose focus. Venerable Mo said that he didn't participate in Fang Zhao's composition this time. An old man like him wouldn't lie about this. That means that these were all composed by Fang Zhao himself. Youngsters these days. Too strong. Luckily, there was only one. Otherwise, would those old veterans still have a way out? To be honest, when it comes to understanding human nature, suffering, and new life, even some people who have lived for close to 200 years can't compare to Fang Zhao. Even if they can, they aren't composers. Hey, I suddenly remembered that musicians from the period of destruction should have a deeper understanding, right? Why haven't I heard of any famous musicians from that period? Even if there were, that period didn't allow pure musicians to exist, right? Another person said. That's true. I saw Fang Zhao's file. He doesn't seem to have experienced much suffering. That's talent. Oh, people really can't be compared. The production team acted quickly and immediately contacted Fang Zhao to discuss the whole package. Fang Zhao didn't have anything urgent to do recently, so he stayed on the island and smoothly received the call from the production team. While he was discussing the package with the production team, Little Bear was sitting on the sofa in the basement, watching TV in the remodeled warehouse. Yan Biao and Zuiyu, who had finished tidying up the armory, came over to take a look. Seeing Little Bear sitting there quietly, they felt that this child was rather pitiful. Yan Biao wiped his face to soften his stiff expression and brought some fruits and snacks over. Little friend, do you miss your family? Yan Biao asked with a smile. Little Bear raised his head and gave him a questioning look. Family? Wasn't the one we met last time your family member? Little Bear pursed his lips and shook his feet. Oh, her. She brought people to poke at tomorrow's empire. If we don't wipe them out, we won't be able to set sail. The Interstellar Navigation Corps is still missing a component. Yan Biao and Zuiyu?
No.
Shut up. This is too much information. We don't want to hear it. Why did you reveal such confidential information so easily? Yan Biao wanted to slap himself. Who asked you to speak out of turn? The atmosphere became awkward once again. Just as Yan Biao and Zuiyu were about to leave, Little Bear glanced at them, raised a mischievous smile, and called out to them. Hey, salted fish, have you heard of tearing a mecha with your bare hands? Zuiyu. No. I've only heard of shredded chicken. After saying that, he asked, Little friend, have you seen a mecha swallowed whole? Both parties looked at each other in silence. Then, as if he had suddenly received and deciphered some information, his expression turned ugly and his eyes flickered. Zuiyu wished he could slap himself. Who asked you to speak so quickly? This child's gaze was too strange. When he looked over, it didn't seem like he was joking. It felt like there was a horror story they didn't know about. Swallowing a mecha was real. Tearing a mecha with his bare hands might not be fake either. Zuiyu trembled. He suddenly envied Nanfeng. Chapter 5:20. Nanfeng, who was envied by Yan Biao and Zuiyu, was in high spirits. Although he was just an assistant and manager, he represented Fang Zhao in public. People who wanted to curry favor with Fang Zhao or discuss collaborations had to go through him when Fang Zhao was in seclusion. It wasn't just collectors who had come to look for artifacts. Some big shots in the business world and celebrities had also sought him out. Although these people only wanted to find out if they could purchase 1 or 2 pieces of Fang Zhao's porcelain, being able to speak to them made him extremely excited. He, Nanfeng, had once struggled at the bottom of Huangzhou's entertainment circle. Now, his network of connections had expanded to the point where everyone in the industry was jealous. Nanfeng couldn't help but get a little complacent. Of course, even if he got complacent, he wouldn't harm his boss's interests. He only felt complacent in his heart. He wouldn't show it, and he wouldn't let others find fault with Fang Zhao. After dealing with the artifacts, Fang Zhao entrusted him with the important task of handling the paperwork for a private collection hall. The site for the private collection hall was finally chosen. With the help of various continents' museums, the paperwork was completed quickly. All that was left was for the demolition. It would take another 6 months before the demolition could be completed and construction could begin. Nanfeng's current job was to handle the paperwork. He didn't have to worry about anything else. Nanfeng's heart ached as he watched the money flow out. Although the money wasn't his, he still felt bad. Those porcelain pieces were so expensive. Why did Feng Zhao donate them just like that? Sigh, he could only watch helplessly no matter what his boss did. However, when he found out that the Above the Blue Dome of Heaven production team was going to buy all of Feng Zhao's works, Nanfeng's heart ached a lot. After settling the paperwork, Nanfeng made a trip to the Yenzhou Museum to thank the museum's curator for his help. He also took a look at Feng Zhao's belongings, a few artifacts that hadn't been donated. Nanfeng could understand that it was normal to have a few artifacts. What he couldn't understand was that among these few artifacts, there was a cracked bowl with what looked like an animal bite mark. There were so many intact artifacts. Why did his family keep a broken one? Incomprehensible. After leaving the Yenzhou Museum, Nanfeng flew straight to Feng Zhao's small island to report on his work. He had completed all of his boss's orders. There would definitely be a bonus. Excited, Nanfeng couldn't stop laughing along the way. However, he restrained his laughter when he landed. He still had to maintain the image of being steady, reliable, loyal, and dedicated. If he smiled too much, it would ruin his image and make his boss feel that he was unreliable. Furthermore, through these missions, Nanfeng had met even more people and seen a broader stage. Back when he had been fighting alone in Huangzhou, he had looked down on these people now. Nanfeng felt that his professionalism had improved, and his professional life had sublimated. He couldn't be careless anymore. Nanfeng, who looked like an elite, walked toward the house on the island with a smile on his face. When he met Yan Biao and Zuiyu, Nanfeng greeted them and was about to head into the house when he saw Curly Hair strolling out leisurely. Curly Hair yawned listlessly, looking very listless. Now that Nanfeng was here, it couldn't stay in its room and play games anymore. Unhappy. When he looked at Nanfeng, his eyes were deep and gloomy, as if he was complaining about something. But Nanfeng didn't know. He just felt that Yan Biao and Zhu hadn't taken good care of Curly Hair for him to be so listless in such a short time. There was no one else on the island, and Boss was busy. If it wasn't Yan Biao and Zuiyu, who else could it be? Nanfeng glanced at them disapprovingly when he was certain of this. But now wasn't the time to talk about this. Nanfeng went over and rubbed Curly Hair's head. Actually, he wanted to comb Curly Hair's hair. A few strands weren't curled properly and were too protruding. It would be uncomfortable if he didn't comb them. But Boss wouldn't let them comb Curly Hair's hair, so Nanfeng could only endure. He had nowhere to vent, so he could only change his target. Nanfeng rubbed Curly Hair's head and looked at Yan Biao and Zuiyu. How long has it been since little curls went out? A few days, Yan Biao replied vaguely. How can a dog not go out for a walk? Boss said he wouldn't go out to sea for the time being. Yan Biao replied stiffly. Nanfeng didn't know what to say to these two. Why didn't these two know how to be flexible? If Boss didn't let them go out to sea, they could just walk around the island. If they didn't want to go far, they could just walk the dog around the house a few times. Smelling the flowers and grass, teasing the insects, strengthening the body, and facilitating bowel movements. This bunch of people didn't know how to raise a dog. All right. If you don't want to walk him, I will. You guys go on patrol. I will bring little Curly Hair out for a walk after reporting. I will be staying on the island for 2 more days. Curly Hair looked at Nanfeng with a deep gaze. Nanfeng sighed when he saw this. Look, Curly Hair's eyes are sparkling. He can't wait. After saying that, he rubbed Curly Hair's head again before entering the house. Yan Biao and Zuiyu. Brave warrior.
Sigh.
2 hours later, Nanfeng brought Curly Hair out for a walk after reporting.
He didn't put on a leash.
The island was his boss's territory, and there was no one else around. There was no need for a leash. Nanfeng was in a good mood after receiving his boss's approval and a bonus. He didn't reprimand Yan Biao and Zuiyu when he saw them. He even said, "Comrades, let's get together tonight." "Did you get a bonus?" Yan Biao asked. "Heh," as expected of an old comrade.
You don't even need to say it.
Nanfeng smiled proudly. "Let's have a drink tonight? I brought some alcohol when I came over. We can talk for a while, but we can pass on the alcohol. Us bodyguards can't drink during working hours." "All right, then let's talk for a while. It won't take up too much of your time." There was a room in the house reserved for Nanfeng, but he wasn't there. When the sky gradually darkened, Nanfeng rode a small patrol car to a sentry post on the island with a box of canned fruit juice. He didn't bring any alcohol. Yan Biao and Zuiyu were already waiting there. Nanfeng tossed the fruit juice over. "I will accompany you to drink this too." Even if it was fruit juice, Yan Biao and Zuiyu didn't dare drink too much. Feng Zhao had warned them 2 days ago about the severity of the situation and that they had to be prepared for battle at all times. Only Nanfeng, who didn't know anything, drank the fruit juice happily. Although he didn't drink, he was in a good mood. Nanfeng floated up again. Outside, he represented Feng Zhao, so he was extremely restrained. Now that he wasn't at work, he was surrounded by his own people, and his boss wasn't around, so Nanfeng naturally didn't hold it in any longer. His emotions leaked out, and he gave a simple recount of his experiences outside. "He, I'm famous now. Everyone in the industry calls me Great King Nanfeng." Nanfeng rocked back and forth with laughter. "Ha ha ha, I, Great King Nanfeng, have really made a name for myself." Yan Biao and Zuiyu. "Congratulations, Great King Nanfeng." Nanfeng waved his hands reservedly. His smile faded, and he let out a long sigh. "The reason I called you guys today is actually to talk about my career plans. I know that in the future, the boss's focus will definitely continue to be on the art of music. Everything else is secondary. He isn't interested in endorsements or collaborations. As for me, I don't have a musical background, and my musical attainments aren't high. I've already worked very hard to learn, but I don't have the talent. I haven't made much progress in 10 years. The more I advance, the more professional pressure I'll have to bear." Yan Biao and Zuiyu fell silent. Although bodyguards didn't need to understand music, they were still under a lot of pressure. Nanfeng said with some melancholy, "This time, when I went to work for the boss, I had a deep feeling, especially when I was facing those masters from the academic world. A stream of professional jargon was thrown at me, leaving me dumbfounded. Actually, it's fine if I embarrass myself, but I can't embarrass the boss. The boss is aiming for the highest award in the arts. That's not something he can get at his age. He still has to gain more experience. When he has enough experience, he can aim for the next stage of the Galaxy Awards. The boss should find someone who knows more about music as his assistant and someone who understands the higher levels of the music art circle as his manager. As for me, I'm not interested in music. If I continue to stay by the boss's side, I won't be able to help much. I won't be able to show my value. The boss is already very good to us. We can't be too greedy. If we don't have the ability, then don't cling to that position. Be more dignified and don't make things difficult for the boss." Yan Biao. "No. The boss is still very satisfied with you." Nanfeng immediately tossed aside that little bit of sadness and became proud again. "Ha ha ha. Of course I know the boss is very satisfied with me. My work attitude is so good. Other than the fact that I'm not professional enough when it comes to music, I can take care of everything else. Let's not talk about other things, but I can walk the dog better than the two of you." Yan Biao and Zuiyu. Nanfeng patted the two of them on the shoulders. "I have to say something to the two of you. Comrades, as subordinates, you have to think about the boss's thoughts, be anxious about the boss's worries, and solve the boss's problems. You can't always move when the boss gives you a nudge." Yan Biao. "But it's also possible that your thoughts are worlds apart from the boss's." Nanfeng said confidently, "That kind of thing won't happen to me." Yan Biao said with difficulty, "All right, as long as you're confident." Nanfeng put one hand on the other's shoulder and continued the previous topic. "When the private collection hall is built, I'll go and have a chat with the boss. Actually, when I was reporting to the boss today, I originally wanted to discuss my career plans with him. But I don't know why, but I suddenly chickened out just as I was about to say it. Ha ha ha. Nanfeng laughed and put on a thoughtful expression. Actually, it's good to talk to the boss beforehand. He can look for suitable candidates first. Yeah, that's settled. I'll stay up all night to write a career plan. Tomorrow, I'll go and talk to the boss about my resignation. So you thought of something and froze in the act of drinking his juice. He looked at Yen Biao. Yen Biao's eyes were blank. He vaguely recalled that he seemed to have said something similar before. Yen Biao shuddered when he recalled that experience that shattered his worldview. He said to Nanfeng seriously, "Don't say such things in the future. Or, say it in a different way." After some thought, Yen Biao tried to persuade him again. Your current position is still very suitable. Don't underestimate yourself. The boss really doesn't want to replace you. Nanfeng took it as a consolation. Ha ha ha, I know you guys can't bear to let me go. After all, we've been comrades and colleagues for so many years. Yen Biao. No, I just have a bad feeling. Anyway, don't say such things in the future. It sounds scary, so you nodded vigorously. Right? Don't say such things. It's scary. Chapter 5:21. Nanfeng felt like he couldn't keep up with Yen Biao and Zuyu's train of thought. After some thought, he came to a conclusion. Different professions had different ways of thinking. There was a huge difference between a bodyguard and a manager. Who knew if they would still have common topics in the future? Nanfeng didn't delve too deeply into the matter. He chatted with Yen Biao and Zuyu for a bit before returning to his room. The island was very quiet at night. There weren't many insects chirping outside the window, just the rustling of leaves. After taking a quick shower, Nanfeng sat in front of his desk and opened up a digital document to write down his career plan. This document was for Feng Zhao to read, so he paid extra attention to his wording. While he was helping Feng Zhao out, many people had contacted him. Among them, a portion of them had expressed interest in becoming Feng Zhao's assistant or manager. Given Feng Zhao's current status, an assistant was definitely not enough. This was an opportunity for them. Since they couldn't contact Feng Zhao, they could only start with Nanfeng. These people were either music majors or had minored in music in university. They had a lot of credentials and dazzling resumes. Nanfeng had compiled a list of names and gotten someone to investigate them. He would present the information he had gathered to Feng Zhao when the time came, along with the career planning document. Actually, Nanfeng didn't really want to leave. He was just a little arrogant, but he hadn't lost his mind. He understood that all the glory and treatment he received were because of Feng Zhao. If he left Feng Zhao, he would return to his original state. Perhaps there were some people with ulterior motives who wanted to get Feng Zhao's secret information from him. Nanfeng knew all too well how complicated the entertainment industry was. Bosses like Feng Zhao were few and far between. The working environment here was also simple. There weren't many schemes and deceit. The pay was high, and one could go to all sorts of high-level events to broaden their horizons.
His peers couldn't compare.
Yen Biao and Zuyu could get such a high pay without doing anything. In the past, he would have been more than happy to do it. He could get such a high pay and so many bonuses. If he didn't feel guilty now, what about in the future? What about in the future? Feng Zhao was already able to single-handedly produce an entire season of Above the Blue Dome of Heaven. Most people in the industry couldn't even hope to catch up. Nanfeng felt that he didn't have the ability to continue working hard with his boss. He had to give up his position, but he wouldn't leave immediately. After the newcomers arrived, he had to take care of them for a period of time before letting them go. The newcomers nowadays were all impatient. He didn't know if they could walk a dog properly. The more he wrote, the sadder he became. Even Nanfeng's eyes reddened. He sniffed and continued to write. Feng Zhao finished reading the script and prepared to reply to the cast and crew's email. The first season of Above the Blue Dome of Heaven had already started airing tonight. The production team was very efficient. The second season was also in post-production. The music studio was also contacting Feng Zhao frequently. One song could be used in many ways, and there were still some difficulties in adapting it. If they encountered any difficulties, they would contact Feng Zhao to discuss and resolve it. Recently, Feng Zhao had been guarding the island. He had no urgent matters to attend to, so he replied to emails quickly. Today was the same. After scanning the edited draft, he sent it over and edited it into an email. Suddenly, Feng Zhao's typing hand stopped. His ears twitched, catching the high-frequency and low-frequency sounds that were hard for ordinary people to hear. His expression turned serious, and he quickly put away the music score. At the same time, he used the voice control communicator to contact Little Bear. Hide well. Little Bear, who had been about to go upstairs to watch a drama with Feng Zhao, turned around and locked the warehouse door. Holding the black ball in his hand, Little Bear looked at the aquarium he had just moved over today. The originally leisurely sea slug in the aquarium suddenly became restless and started banging against the walls of the aquarium. Inside the house, Curly Hair, who had been sprawled on the sofa in the living room, heard this and scurried back to his room to hide the game console in an explosion-proof barrel. He scanned the room and picked up a few more items to hide. After hiding all his treasures, Curly Hair looked longingly at the location of the explosion-proof barrel before storming out to the front yard. Feng Zhao had said that if anyone attacked, he was to guard the front yard first. In such a dangerous situation, he was allowed to bite first and report later. At the same time, Yan Biao and Zuiyu, who were on patrol duty, also received Feng Zhao's notification. Prepare for battle. Feng Zhao told Yan Biao to bring Nanfeng along. DDD. The island's security system sounded an urgent warning. Nanfeng, who was in his room writing his career plan, felt his heart tighten. He hurriedly saved his document and got up. A series of explosions came from the distance. Some came from the sky, while others came from underwater. Nanfeng could clearly feel the ground beneath his feet shaking. The feeling of impending danger made Nanfeng's melancholic mind clear up instantly. Having served on planet Baiji before, Nanfeng knew all too well that this wasn't a small skirmish. Something big was going to happen. Just as he was about to ask in the work chat group, Nanfeng received a message from Yan Biao. Wait for me at the basement entrance. Nanfeng didn't ask any further. He changed his clothes and shoes and arrived at the basement. When he arrived, he saw Yan Biao walking over with a tense expression. What's going on? Nanfeng asked. He had many suspicions. He thought about Feng Zhao's cooperation with the military, the mysterious background of Feng Zhao that was circulating online, and the cultural relics that had been donated not long ago. Yan Biao opened the basement door and replied as he led Nanfeng down. The Interplanetary Fund and Tomorrow's Empire have started a war. Nanfeng. Why would the world's richest man and a terrorist organization start a war here? Although he didn't understand this logic, he couldn't be bothered with the current situation. There was simply no time to think about anything else. Where are we going now? Nanfeng asked. Armory, Yan Biao said as he opened one of the doors. Nanfeng was stunned when he saw the situation on the other side of the door. This was an armory? It was completely different from the garage-sized armory that Nanfeng had imagined. This could already be considered a small-scale base. The quantity and quality of the equipment wasn't something an ordinary person could possess. There were many new models that couldn't be bought even if one had the money. Firearms and ammunition aside, there were even mobile armors for assault missions. This place, when was it built like this? Nanfeng gulped. Isn't it a bit excessive? There's a permit. Yan Biao walked over to one of the shelves. There was a box he had prepared beforehand. Distant battles have nothing to do with us. Don't ask too much. Just guard this building well. Go in and pick whatever weapon you want. There are exoskeleton suits over there. You can pick one if you need it. They are all new models and can be reimbursed. Don't be reluctant to use them. Understood. Nanfeng looked at the armory with envy. He was itching to try it out. He felt his battle blood boil again. It had been a long time since he had touched these things after being discharged from the military. Can I use that one? Nanfeng pointed at the 8-meter-tall mobile armor in the corner. Yan Biao replied, No, you might be killed by mistake. Nanfeng nodded. Understood. From the commotion outside, it was obvious that the two sides were engaged in an intense battle. Perhaps the enemy was using the same model or similar mecha. For example, there might be a traitor in the team. Hence, Yan Biao's claim of being killed by mistake was possible. Battle plan? Nanfeng asked. Boss will guard the backyard. Zuoyu will guard the left side. I will guard the right side. I will guard the front yard.
No.
Don't worry about the front yard. Just be flexible and take care of yourself. Yan Biao thought for a moment and reminded, if the situation inside the building turns bad, run to the front yard. Yan Biao, who was about to leave with the weapons box, looked at Nanfeng with a complicated expression. Keep the internal comms open. Keep in touch. Don't be surprised no matter what you see. Understood. Nanfeng had been on a secret mission before, so he didn't find Yan Biao's words strange. It had been too long since he had fought in actual combat and lacked training. Although he would occasionally go to the shooting range to practice, his physical fitness was definitely not as good as before. Not to mention, he wasn't as strong as Yan Biao. It was better to improve himself. He picked an exoskeleton suit and some firearms and ammunition. It had been too long since he had fought in actual combat. He definitely couldn't compare to Yan Biao and Zuoyu. He had to rely on external forces. He wasn't good at close combat, but he still had to be on guard. Before he had retired, he was also the gun king of the outpost team. Nanfeng touched his left eye and felt the Wuji's color-changing eyeball. Although there are many things that everyone knows, but I don't, that's not important. Before I retire, I, Nanfeng, will do my best, even if I have to sacrifice myself, for the glory of the Gun King. Chapter 5:22. After equipping himself, Nanfeng left the basement with a box of weapons and went upstairs. Yan Biao had said that Feng Zhao would be guarding the backyard. Nanfeng was worried that Feng Zhao would be under too much pressure, so he decided to check out the situation in the backyard first. Sparks streaked across the sky from time to time. The forest blocked the view of the situation. Nanfeng could only tell from the distant explosions that the Interplanetary Fund and Tomorrow's Empire were engaged in an intense exchange of fire. A huge fireball soared into the sky, dyeing the island's night sky red. The ground was shaking. It was hard to tell which side had the upper hand. Nanfeng's heart was racing. He calmed his breathing and quietly set up his gun. Through the scope, he searched the forest ahead, his finger on the trigger.
Come.
Here. Nanfeng locked onto a target and prepared to fire. Bang.
Bang. Bang. Bang.
The target he was aiming at was eliminated first. It wasn't just the one he had his eyes on. Sounds of bodies falling could be heard from several other places in the forest. He had noticed some, but he hadn't noticed others until they fell. The gun was fired by Feng Zhao. He was clearly just one person, but he had managed to suppress the enemy with firepower. Feng Zhao had already reaped a wave of kills before Nanfeng could fire. Nanfeng. All right, this round of attacks isn't over yet. Nanfeng continued to wait. But very quickly, he heard the sounds coming from the forest and realized that something wasn't right. This commotion, assault mechas. The other party had indeed deployed assault mechas. The security system was in full defense mode. Several missiles had been intercepted in the air. The other party's attacks were swift and ferocious. It was a suicidal attack. The Interplanetary Fund hadn't been able to stop these people, but according to Yan Biao, as long as they could defend against this round of attacks, there wouldn't be any problems. However, the current situation wasn't in their favor. The guns in their hands weren't enough to deal with a war machine like mechas. Nanfeng glanced at the weapons box beside him. He was thinking about how he could help Feng Zhao defend this area when he saw the mecha charging at the front get kicked away. Yes, Feng Zhao kicked that mecha.
Fly.
Over. If he hadn't seen wrongly, the mecha had caved in where it had been kicked. Nanfeng. This didn't make sense. Nanfeng looked at the mecha that had been kicked away, then looked at the exoskeleton that he had just equipped. This was the first time that Nanfeng had such a clear understanding. My boss is inhumanly strong. Looking at the backyard, there was no place for Nanfeng to use his skills. He couldn't even find a chance to finish off the attack. I don't seem to be able to exert strength here. Realizing this cruel reality, Nanfeng didn't waste any time. He suppressed the surging doubts in his heart and moved to another location. Although he didn't know how Feng Zhao could be so strong, and he didn't know if Feng Zhao had some unknown high-tech assistance, the current situation didn't allow him to think too much. Yan Biao said that no matter what you see, don't be surprised. Maybe he was referring to this? Pushing aside the distracting thoughts in his mind, Nanfeng listened carefully to the movements outside and checked the real-time firepower distribution map displayed by the security system. Yan Biao and Zui were on the left and right sides. Due to the terrain, the defensive pressure on the side was much lower. With Yan Biao and Zui's weapons and equipment, as well as the security system, they didn't need his support for the time being. Check the front yard. Yan Biao said that there was no need to worry about the front yard. Did that mean that there were interplanetary fund personnel guarding the front yard? However, Nanfeng felt uneasy if he didn't go over to take a look. Furthermore, it sounded like the exchange of gunfire in the front yard was even fiercer. The front yard wasn't easy to defend. If the enemy's attacks were rapid and ferocious, and they mobilized many mechas, the defensive pressure would be considerable. With that thought, Nanfeng carried his weapons case and headed in the direction of the front yard. The lights in the house were all extinguished. Nanfeng moved quickly by relying on the firelight outside and his familiarity with the layout of the house. When he passed by the living room, Nanfeng's footsteps paused. The main door wasn't tightly shut, and there were no signs of outsiders entering the house. The security system also didn't alert him of an intruder. Normally, the main door would automatically close if it wasn't set to open. However, there was a dog tag stuck there, so the door couldn't be closed. Nanfeng was very familiar with that dog tag. It belonged to Curly Hair. He had even seen Curly Hair wearing it when he had brought him out for a walk today. No wonder he hadn't heard Curly Hair's bark despite the huge commotion. It seemed like he had run out. But at this time, a pet dog running into the battlefield would only end up as cannon fodder. There might not even be any scraps left. He could only pray that Curly Hair would be lucky enough to survive the battlefield. 300 million no, a priceless dog. Nanfeng's heart ached so much that he couldn't breathe. His eyes were bloodshot. To Nanfeng, Curly Hair wasn't just a pet dog anymore. His value was one thing, and the other was that he had developed feelings for Curly Hair after interacting with him for a long time. Curly Hair also had military merits, so the significance was different. He listened carefully again but didn't hear Curly Hair barking. He wasn't in the house, and he couldn't hear a dog barking outside. Nanfeng's tears were about to fall. However, now wasn't the time to be sad. He collected his emotions, picked up the dog tag, and put it in his pocket. He closed the main door and went to the window on the second floor. He hadn't been able to see the battlefield clearly from downstairs because of the angle. Now that he was in a good position, Nanfeng's eyelids twitched when he saw the situation outside. Gravel flew everywhere, and explosions rang out incessantly. Grass and dust rose into the air. Under the flashes of explosions, the cold gleam of metal brought with it a threatening sharpness. Amidst the visible airwaves and dense explosions of fire, a gigantic mechanical monster was running, ignoring all attacks as it charged forward. Of the three mechas at the very front, one had been trampled, one had been sent flying, and the last had been bitten in half. There seemed to be a heavy mecha slightly further away that had been trampled to the ground in the first clash. That monster then turned around and trampled it a second time. The mecha let out a cracking sound as fragments flew everywhere. The scene was extremely violent and suffocating. Nanfeng was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He felt all the cells in his body tremble. He closed the window as fast as he could and ran towards the basement. At the same time, he contacted Yan Biao. "Brother Biao, the enemy has used a secret weapon. We can't defend the front yard anymore. That monster has a fiendish appearance and looks like a demonic being. It tramples on the mecha like it's a tin can." That isn't something we can defend against at our level. The simple toys in our hands won't be able to do anything. I'll go to the armory now to see if there's anything else we can use. Although he had only seen it for a few moments, Nanfeng could tell that if the combat power of the assault mecha in the basement was 100, the monster in the front yard was definitely over 10,000. Fight my ass. Nanfeng could only hope that the Interplanetary Fund would quickly transfer reinforcements over. He didn't know how much longer they could hold out. Perhaps if Feng Zhao came over, they could hold out a little longer? As Nanfeng was thinking about this, he heard Yen Biao say, "That is our side's secret weapon." Screech! Nanfeng braked suddenly. The friction between the soles of his shoes and the ground let out a short screech. S. Nanfeng felt a little dazed. "That is curly hair," Yen Biao added. Nanfeng. Nanfeng suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. "What do you think that thing is? What curly hair?" "I don't believe it." Waves of dizziness came over him. Nanfeng was in a daze. He stumbled back to the window and stared unblinkingly outside. The mechanical monster viciously bit a mech and tore it in half. The other half in its mouth was thrown into the air and smashed towards the flying device that was flying over. After taking a few hits, it shook off the various debris on its body. Then it went on a rampage to attract hatred. Nanfeng's liver trembled as he watched. It's biting the mecha again. Although Yen Biao hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he could imagine the situation in the front yard from Nanfeng's words. "Don't be shocked. It's just basic operations." Nanfeng. "What basic operations? What basic operations?" He had heard every word clearly, but it also felt like he hadn't understood a single word. In his chaotic thoughts, something seemed to shatter with a crack. Chapter 5:23. There was too much information in just a few sentences, and Nanfeng's mind was in a mess. However, as one of the elites who had served on planet Baiji, he still had the qualities of an elite. Nanfeng tried his best to calm his chaotic thoughts. He had always thought that he was a core member of the team. Now it seemed like the truth was too cruel. No wonder Yen Biao and Zui had been hesitant to speak when he had hugged the dog. Nanfeng wanted to slap himself. Where's my acute perception? Has it degenerated? Nanfeng couldn't help but ask, "Do you all know?" Yen Biao. That's not the point. Since Nanfeng had already gone to the front yard and the situation was complicated, Yen Biao didn't hide it anymore. "Don't worry about the front yard. Just stay in the house. If there are any that slip through, just finish them off. If you use the rocket launcher, be careful not to miss. It's best if you don't get involved in the battle in the front yard. It's not strange for that dog to do anything when it's agitated. It's also possible that it doesn't differentiate between friend and foe. If you miss and hit it, the chances of you being killed by mistake are even higher. Staying in the house is the safest. If the defenses aren't strong enough and too many people sneak in, go to the front yard and shout Curly Hair's name. He can protect you. Remember, you have to shout. Otherwise, he might miss you or accidentally injure you." Nanfeng trembled even more violently. He took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. No matter how shocked he was, he had to suppress it at this time. Since the dog was on their side, then the one firing at the dog was the enemy. Even the Interplanetary Fund wasn't on their side. If it was really on their side, their own dog. Nanfeng felt a little comforted when he thought about it this way. All right. I'll stay in the house. Just let me know if you need any support. Cough. Brother Biao, with curly hair in this state, can he really recognize me even if I shout? Nanfeng looked at the mechanical monster that was massacring not too far away, and his heart was filled with doubt. This killing machine's eyes must have turned red from killing, right? Does it still have any rationality? Can it stop to save people? Yen Biao was silent. He didn't know if curly hair still had rationality, but since Feng Zhao had told them that, he told Nanfeng the same thing. Don't worry, he will definitely recognize you. Nanfeng was relieved. He still trusted his comrade, Yen Biao. Just as he was thinking about this, Nanfeng looked out the window and discovered that after the mechanical monster smashed a mecha into pieces, it glanced over and then suddenly wagged its tail excitedly. Nanfeng. An ominous premonition. The monster howled at the sky, and it sounded like a high-speed motor. Nanfeng. This extremely mechanical call almost scared Nanfeng Hun out of his wits. His left eye blinked uncomfortably, and his body was so stiff that he didn't know how to move. His mind, which had just calmed down, became sluggish again. There seemed to be the sound of something shattering in his heart. He spoke. Nanfeng stared blankly out the window. The dog excitedly jumped up and stomped on a few more intruders. Look, I did a meritorious deed. Another one caught.
Ow.
Then, he dragged a heavy mecha around like it was a piece of junk. The mech that had been bitten clattered against the ground as the dog ran. Along the way, parts of the mech were sent flying, and sparks mixed with black smoke were constantly emitted. Nanfeng. His soul was in an out-of-body state. At this moment, he suddenly recalled what he had said to Curly Hair not too long ago. Boss will be happy if Curly Hair does a meritorious deed. There will even be rewards. Bite one if you find one. Bite two if you see two. Bite as many as you can. I will take responsibility if anything happens. Nanfeng wished he could turn back time, or teleport back to his past self, and wake him up. Who asked you to fucking spout nonsense? Curly Hair, who was in high spirits from his meritorious deed, simply didn't know Nanfeng's current dilemma. He firmly remembered Nanfeng's words of make up for mistakes with meritorious deeds. His thinking was simple. Meritorious deeds also needed witnesses. If the surveillance cameras were broken, who could testify for him? Feng Zhao was in the backyard, and Yen Biao and Zui were on the other two sides. There were no acquaintances here to testify for him. Thus, Curly Hair was happy to discover Nanfeng looking over. With a witness, he didn't need to worry about missing out on meritorious deeds even if he was hungry and devoured a few mechas. Thus, Curly Hair devoured as he killed. Not only did he devour mechas, but he also devoured humans. Nanfeng. His soul continued to leave his body. By the time Curly Hair finished off all the intruders in the front yard, the Interplanetary Fund reinforcements had also arrived. However, there were no signs of enemies approaching the house for a long time. Feng Zhao also received a message from the Interplanetary Fund. Their mission was complete, and there wasn't much left for them to do. The crisis had already passed. After briefly explaining the situation to the three of them, Feng Zhao got them to take care of the battlefield and clean up any stragglers. Meanwhile, he went to other parts of the island to see if there were any hidden enemies. In the front yard, Curly Hair transformed back into his pet dog form and ran back with his tail wagging. Then, he discovered that he was blocked outside the door. Curly Hair looked up at a certain window on the second floor after seeing the tightly shut door. His eyes were filled with resentment and indignation. Open the door. Boa. Nanfeng came down the stairs in a sorry state. Chapter 524. Nanfeng was no longer in the mood to mourn the $10 million eyeball. He watched as Curly Hair scampered around, licking here and there like he usually did. The sky was dark, and Curly Hair would disappear without a trace. After a while, he would pop out from another place covered in dust and leaves. In the past, he would have gone over and carried Curly Hair back. But now, he didn't dare go over. He didn't even dare shout. He could only ask Yen Biao. What is Curly Hair doing? Nanfeng asked. Yen Biao glanced over at Curly Hair. Didn't boss say to clean up the battlefield? Curly Hair is sniffing around to see if there are any bombs. Bombs? Nanfeng jumped up in shock. Isn't the security system able to detect them? Just in case. If the other party tampered with them, they might not be able to detect everything. Besides flammable and explosive items, there are also other dangerous chemicals, radioactive substances, and so on. Curly Hair also served in the spaceport inspection team before and received a military medal. He is very sensitive to the smell of dangerous substances. No, that's not how you put it. Is it reliable for him to search by himself? Also, what do we do if he discovers dangerous items? I don't even see an explosion-proof barrel.
Don't just stand there.
Get moving. Do you have any detectors or the like? I can help too. Nanfo was about to rush into the house to look for equipment when he heard Yan Biao say, "Boss said." Nanfeng stopped in his tracks and turned his head stiffly. What did Boss say? Boss said to leave it to Curly Hair to handle. Yan Biao shifted his gaze to Curly Hair's actions. His expression turned serious as he pointed over. He found something. Nanfeng also looked over. He saw Curly Hair pick up a badly deformed mecha and toss it to the side. His mouth suddenly widened to an exaggerated size and swallowed the object under the mecha. Following that, the sound of intestines squirming could be heard. Then, Curly Hair burped and farted loudly. The smell of gunpowder wafted through the air. Nanfeng. Yan Biao said calmly, "Oh, it's a bomb." Nanfeng. He sat down stiffly, his face pale and his eyes blank. This scene seems a little familiar. As expected of our family dog worth close to 300 million. Even basking in the sun gives off a metallic luster. This is the first time I've seen dog fart with my own eyes. As expected of a dog worth close to 300 million yuan. Whether it's a burp or a fart, the breath is so long. If I take a closer look, there's even the smell of gunpowder. Nanfeng was in a daze. How did I find the courage to stop that dog? Yan Biao patted Nanfeng's shoulder. Therefore, just leave this to Curly Hair. It's safe and efficient. We just need to deal with some miscellaneous items, or find someone who's still breathing and shoot them. Nanfeng. While Nanfeng was struggling to reorganize his worldview, Feng Zhao was walking through the forest on the small island, dealing with the hidden intruders. In the war between the Interplanetary Fund and tomorrow's Empire, the main battlefield wasn't here. Instead, it was on an unnoticed planet. The target of the people who attacked the island today was Little Bear. Something must have gone wrong for these people from tomorrow's Empire to be able to find this place. Perhaps there were spies within the Interplanetary Fund, or perhaps the other party had used some means to locate Little Bear. Fortunately, regardless of the situation, the Interplanetary Fund was prepared and had intercepted most of the attacks outside the island. Otherwise, even if he and Curly Hair were on the island, they wouldn't have been able to protect Little Bear. Ever since Little Bear had arrived, he had continued to use the excuse that he was in seclusion to compose and rejected all visitors. He had also shifted the matter of salvaging cultural relics to a place outside the island for Nanfeng to handle. This also reduced the number of times Nanfeng visited. Today, Nanfeng had bumped into one. Feng Zhao raised his gun and finished off the people hiding behind the bushes before continuing his search. Feng Zhao didn't need to look. He could accurately locate every hidden enemy just by hearing. Their breathing, heartbeats, and even the tiniest sounds couldn't escape his ears. The darkness of the night didn't affect him at all. Although explosions could still be heard in the distance, it was already quiet enough for Feng Zhao. During the period of destruction, chaos was the norm. Somewhere, one of them used the rocks and plants as cover to hide himself. Not only was he concealing his presence, but he was also concealing his scent. He was one of the ringleaders in today's mission to attack the island. In their plan, they would spare no expense to break through the Interplanetary Fund's encirclement and capture Little Bear. They would definitely be able to do it within half an hour. But the reality was that half an hour had passed, and they hadn't even gotten close to that building. They had already lost contact with most of the people attacking the island. There were so many mechas in the front yard, but none of them could be contacted. He suspected that the information he had received was wrong, and that this was a trap set up by the Interplanetary Fund. He wasn't sure about the situation in the front yard, but in the backyard, the person who had brought them the shadow of death was too strange. There was no hesitation or warning. It was hard to tell who he was aiming at next. One shot after another, logically speaking, there was no time to aim. He didn't even have time to catch his breath. At first glance, it looked like he was shooting randomly. But the reality was that every shot had a person collapsing. It was the kind that killed in one shot. If he hadn't retreated quickly, he probably wouldn't have been able to survive. However, based on the blurry image that had been transmitted, was that Feng Zhao? In the past, he had felt that Feng Zhao had been overpraised. Music aside, no matter how good he was at gaming or how godly his operation was, it was just a game. Even if he had a military background, there was no need to take it to heart. But the experience just now had refreshed his understanding. Also, didn't the outside world say that Feng Zhao was a good-natured person who treated others with tolerance and had a benevolent spirit? Benevolent my ass. The world lied to me. You could say that he was a professional assassin or an experienced mercenary. Was this a fucking artistic youth? What kind of artistic youth could kill a bunch of people in one shot? No, there was another possibility. That person just now wasn't Feng Zhao at all. He recalled everything that had happened just now. It was as if every scene had been slowed down and zoomed in. Some fine details gradually became clearer. There was clearly only one person, but he had suppressed them from start to finish. He couldn't sense any intent or killing intent. Looking at the way he had kicked the mecha, it was very likely that he had some kinetic exoskeleton technology that the Interplanetary Fund hadn't made public yet. Or perhaps it was some sort of biological modification technology. He had reason to suspect that the person just now wasn't Feng Zhao but a killing machine groomed by the Interplanetary Fund. Was it Feng Zhao or not? His eyebrows were almost knitted together. Then his expression suddenly froze. A pair of feet stopped not far from him. He could feel a gaze that was as sharp as a knife landing on his body. Cold air rose from his feet as cold sweat dripped down his back. He raised his head and looked at the person standing not far away. The silhouette of the person in the night was blurry, but following the explosion in the distance, he clearly saw the other party's appearance and met that pair of ice-cold eyes. It was a face that he often saw on screen, but at this moment, it felt unfamiliar. He carefully observed every part of Feng Zhao's body for any abnormalities, especially his face. This face was indeed Feng Zhao's face. This face appeared in advertisements and publicity on various continents every day. He was too famous, so it wasn't impossible to not remember him. Even when the lively Feng Zhao on the screen wasn't smiling, his eyes carried a kind of peace and tolerance. The celebrity Feng Zhao that was known to the masses shouldn't be like this. But at this moment, he wished that the person before him was Feng Zhao, that genius composer of the music world. That way, he would still have a sliver of a chance at survival. After all, musicians always had their emotions run ahead of their rationality, so it was easier for them to be affected. As he thought this, a thought flashed through his mind. Don't shoot. He tossed the gun in his hand to the side and raised both hands. You can't kill me. Do you know who I am? He bellowed. Feng Zhao looked at him. He gritted his teeth. I am a descendant of the period of destruction's Feng Zhao.
Bang.
What he got in response was a bullet. The hand that had been about to reach the dagger in his sleeve drooped down powerlessly. Even in death, he still couldn't understand what the Interplanetary Fund had promised Feng Zhao. Why didn't Feng Zhao have the slightest bit of hesitation when firing his gun? Didn't they all say that musicians were emotional? Feng Zhao had also acted as the Feng Zhao in Founding Era. Hearing the period of destruction Feng Zhao should have some fluctuations, right? If he was still alive, he would surely have roared at Feng Zhao. You aren't Feng Zhao. Chapter 5:25. Many people thought that Feng Zhao was a good-natured person who treated others with tolerance and had never seen him lose his temper. However, no one knew that he was a figure of the same generation as the Founding Era's great generals. He couldn't possibly be soft-hearted. After checking the rest of the island, Feng Zhao returned to his residence. The iciness in his eyes gradually receded and was replaced by tolerance and peace. The cannon fire in the distance also gradually subsided. This battle had ended as quickly as it had started. After everything had calmed down, Feng Zhao contacted the Interplanetary Fund's medical team and got Suiyu, Yan Biao, and Nan Feng to get their wounds examined and treated. Yen Biao and Zuiyu had been injured while guarding the house. Nanfeng didn't have any injuries, but he had a problem with his eyes. His artificial left eye had malfunctioned, so the medical team had given him a temporary replacement. However, even this temporary replacement cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Nanfeng wouldn't have been willing to use it himself. Fortunately, this was considered a work injury, and the Interplanetary Fund would reimburse it. In order to replace the mosaic eyeball, Nanfeng had even specially placed it in a box. It had cost over $10 million. He had originally thought he could use it until he was old, but now that it was broken, it could only be sold as scrap. It wouldn't fetch much, so Nanfeng didn't plan on selling it. He kept it as a souvenir. By the time dawn broke, the surface of the sea around the island had been cleaned up. The Interplanetary Fund personnel had started repairing the island. The combatants hadn't retreated. They would continue guarding the island until Little Bear left. Feng Zhao let Yen Biao and Zuiyu rest first before turning to Nanfeng. Follow me. Nanfeng followed Feng Zhao to the study nervously. I originally didn't want you to know all this, Feng Zhao said. I know you have your career plans. If you choose to leave, not knowing anything is the best for you. Nanfeng had originally been a little resentful, but now that he heard Feng Zhao say this, he understood. The more one knew, the more dangerous it would be. If one wanted to stay in the entertainment circles and be a pure entertainment agent, not knowing these secrets would be the easiest and most carefree way. But now, he knew and had seen it with his own eyes. He could only say that his luck was terrible. If he had come during the day and left before dark, he wouldn't have known anything. Feng Zhao looked at him and continued, There are 2 contracts here. You can consider which one to choose. Before you decide, you can't leave the island. I understand. Nanfeng's eyes were red, and his voice was a little hoarse. Boss, I know you're doing this for my own good. I'll consider it seriously. Nanfeng took the 2 contracts back to his room and read them carefully. These 2 contracts gave Nanfeng 2 choices. He could only choose one of them. The other was to give him a portion of the compensation for mental distress and work-related injury. The mental damage fee was understandable. Just one night was too much of a mental blow, and it might even leave a psychological scar. As for the compensation, it was to buy a better artificial left eye for Nanfeng, the kind that could be used until old age. It wouldn't be inferior to his previous everlasting color-changing eye. Nanfeng was moved to tears when he saw the amount written on the contract. He wiped his snot and flipped open the second contract. Nanfeng blinked a few times and abruptly leaned forward to read every word carefully, fearing that he was mistaken. Manager? I can become a permanent employee? Nanfeng was both excited and conflicted. Did he take the money and sign the confidentiality agreement before leaving? Or should he sign an agent contract directly? In his dilemma, Nanfeng opened the electronic document he had saved and read the contents silently for a while before deleting it. Regardless of which option he chose, there was no need for it anymore. Feng Zhao gave Nanfeng some time to calm down and analyze the pros and cons before making a decision. Nanfeng sat in his room, not knowing what to do. He couldn't leave the island now, and he didn't have any other missions. Nanfeng didn't check his chat software and decided to go out for a walk. He saw Yen Biao walking out the moment he stepped out. Didn't catch up on sleep? Nanfeng asked. Yen Biao stretched his arms. I couldn't sleep, so I came out to take a look. What about you? What did boss say to you? Are you still quitting? Nanfeng shook his head. Boss asked me to consider it. I don't know what to choose either. That's right. Calm down and make a new career plan with a new outlook. Yen Biao patted Nanfeng's shoulder and glanced at the door. If you have nothing to do now, you can bring Curly Hair out for a walk. Let him walk around the island and see if he can discover anything else. Nanfeng didn't dare. He had seen how Curly Hair had swallowed people last night. How could he not be afraid now that he was in close contact with such a dangerous creature? But considering the manager's contract, should he give it a try? He had to give it a try to know if he could accept this position. If he could endure the pressure of walking a dog, then it wouldn't be a problem. If he couldn't, then he could only choose the first contract, sign the contract, and leave. Curly Hair was just about to run out when Nanfeng decided to come out. Feng Zhao let Curly Hair search the periphery of the island once more before returning to his room to play games. Nanfeng stepped forward to stop Curly Hair. He took a deep breath and mustered up his courage. Curly Hair. I'll go with you. Curly Hair thought for a bit. Nanfeng could still be a witness if he really discovered anything. All right, but you have to run faster. Nanfeng glanced at the cabinet by the door out of habit at the thought of walking a dog. There are interplanetary fund personnel at the edge of the island. If we need a leash. Nanfeng realized he had just said something stupid. If Curly Hair really wanted to bite someone, how could this thin rope hold him back? He could even chew through mechas, let alone a thin rope. What use was it? Nanfeng had never felt that the rope was so thin and fragile as he looked at the leash in the cabinet. Faster, Nanfeng. Curly Hair urged from outside. Coming. Nanfeng couldn't care less about the leash anymore. He quickly ran out. He had to keep an eye on Curly Hair and prevent him from biting anyone. Thus, Curly Hair jogged in front while Nanfeng followed behind. Nanfeng was curious as he watched Curly Hair. How did such a small dog become such a huge mechanical monster? An extraterrestrial breed? Or a product of the Interplanetary Fund's research? No, if it was the Interplanetary Fund's research, then this wouldn't be the only one. Furthermore, long before Feng Zhao had become famous, he had already had this dog. Was that an unknown extraterrestrial creature? The terrifying image of a huge mechanical dog stomping on a mecha flashed through Nanfeng's mind. He recalled some things that he hadn't noticed in the past. Back when Feng Zhao had moved to his new home, he had bought an alloy chair that was said to be able to easily support the weight of an elephant for Feng Zhao. However, that chair had been flattened into a pancake a few days later. Nanfeng hadn't thought much about it then, but now it seemed like it had probably been trampled on by this dog. Curly Hair searched along the way. When he met a team of Interplanetary Fund personnel in charge of repairing the island, Curly Hair immediately stuck out his tongue and acted like a tired dog. Nanfeng. He wasn't going to be fooled by this scene. Acting.
It was all an act.
This dog had studied at Huangzhou Academy of Art with Feng Zhao. However, Feng Zhao had studied music, while this dog had studied acting. Look at how well this dog acted. His acting skills were seamless, and even Nanfeng had been fooled. When he couldn't see the Interplanetary Fund personnel, Curly Hair deactivated his tired dog mode and prepared to speed up. Curly Hair. Nanfeng called out. Curly Hair looked over suspiciously.
Ow!
Although he wasn't used to it, Nanfeng's nervousness dissipated a little when he saw that Curly Hair seemed easy to talk to. Don't be in a hurry to leave. Let's talk for a bit. Otherwise, we won't be able to talk anymore when I leave, Nanfeng said. Curly Hair was originally a little unhappy about being stopped, but he was frightened when he heard the latter half of Nanfeng's words. Tears welled up in his dog's eyes. Nanfeng, don't go. If Nanfeng left and a new person came, Curly Hair would have to pretend to be a pet dog again. It wouldn't be convenient for him to eat snacks or play games. It hadn't been easy for Nanfeng to find out the truth. How could Curly Hair let Nanfeng leave just like that? Furthermore, Nanfeng was so quick-witted that he could cover for him in the future. Yan Biao and Zuyu weren't as capable as Nanfeng. Who knew? Nanfeng might even be able to secretly make one to satisfy his cravings if Feng Zhao confiscated the game console in the future. Planet Yin's retro handheld game console was thanks to Nanfeng. He could play a game console while taking a stroll. Meanwhile, on Nanfeng's side, Nanfeng was extremely touched when he saw Curly Hair's clear and sincere eyes. Look, what a good dog. I didn't treat him so well in vain. This isn't a pet's reluctance to part with its breeder. This is the recognition of a powerhouse. This proves that I'm irreplaceable. Nanfeng's spirits were lifted. He felt even more confident in himself and was in high spirits like never before. I, King Nanfeng, am alive again. The scales in his heart had already tipped. As an official manager, he would be able to stand at a higher position. His salary would be higher and the pressure would be greater, but what wouldn't there be pressure? Great pressure meant great responsibility. Only this kind of job was worthy of me. King Nanfeng. The word manager carried a sense of mission. His chest was surging with hot blood. How exciting! Besides, no matter what happens, I still have a backer. I have a boss who's inhumanly strong and a dog who's inhumanly strong dog. Then, who do I have to be afraid of? My horizons are different. My thoughts are different. Looking back at the me from last night, I've really been laughably childish. So, what if I don't have musical talent? Can anyone from a music class compete with me? Can their hearts be as strong as mine? Can anyone walk a dog? Can anyone be better than me? Chapter 5:26. Although all sorts of shocks were concentrated together, Nanfeng was able to accept them much faster than Yen Biao and Zuiyu. Feng Zhao had given him time to consider, but Nanfeng had come up with a new career plan in just 2 days, a career plan for a manager. He took this proposal and went to find Feng Zhao to sign the second contract. When he came out of the house again, Nanfeng looked at the clouds in the distance and clenched his fists. Yen Biao asked, "You signed a manager?" Nanfeng didn't reply directly. "Listen, Yen Biao. Listen to what? The sound of dreams coming true. How wonderful. Yen Biao. As long as you're happy." Nanfeng smiled and looked around. "Wears curly hair. Always in his room," Yen Biao replied. How can a dog always stay in his room? Nanfeng realized something was amiss. If Curly Hair really wanted to go out, nobody could stop him unless the boss didn't allow it. "What's going on? What's he doing in his room?" Nanfeng asked. "Playing games. He pulled an all-nighter again," Yen Biao replied calmly. "Nanfeng. What nonsense are you spouting?" Nanfeng didn't want to believe it, but a dog that could turn into a mechanical monster, talk, and play games, that seemed acceptable? Yen Biao felt sorry for Nanfeng. This comrade had suffered a mental blow on the first day of his new job. However, Yen Biao retracted his thoughts the next day. Nanfeng was playing games with Curly Hair. They seemed rather happy. Yen Biao. Are all managers so strong-willed? Besides Curly Hair, Nanfeng also learned of Little Bear's existence. He knew that the island had been attacked because of him. Little Bear would come over to watch dramas with Curly Hair when he was playing games. Anyway, everyone in the house knew of his existence, so he wasn't willing to hide in the basement. A month later, someone from the Interplanetary Fund came to pick up Little Bear. The Interplanetary Fund's head, Yu Hua, came personally. Yu Hua smiled and shook hands with Feng Zhao. "Thank you for your hard work." Whether it was saving Yuanzheng on planet Een or protecting Little Bear, she had to give Feng Zhao credit for the outer space immigration plan and even future interstellar travel. Yu Hua and Feng Zhao had a private chat after letting Little Bear play by himself. Nanfeng and the other two also consciously avoided it. The conversation between the big shots would definitely involve important secrets, but they were not curious. They already knew enough, and the more they knew, the more pressure they felt. Curly Hair looked to both sides before wagging his tail and going back to his room to play games. It knew that once these people from the Interplanetary Fund left, it would have to start studying and taking exams again. Its good days of playing games without restraint had come to an end. Now was the time to play a little longer. There were only Yu Hua and Feng Zhao in the study. Before Little Bear was sent to the island, Feng Zhao had told Yu Hua via long-distance communication that he would protect Little Bear. After everything was over, Yu Hua had told Feng Zhao about her and her family's origins. Feng Zhao had never let down his guard against these extraterrestrial visitors. Yu Hua looked at Feng Zhao. When she had first found out about Feng Zhao, she had only seen him as a talented junior who needed to be supported and encouraged. Now, she saw him as a peer of the same generation. Neither of them were ordinary people. Her ancestors had different genes, while Feng Zhao had changed due to external factors. Both of them had their own secrets. Yu Hua smiled faintly as she accepted the tea Feng Zhao offered. "Just as you guessed, my grandfather, who is also known as Great Master Hingxin, doesn't belong to this planet. Instead, he came from a distant galaxy. He came here by chance and was unable to return. Thus, until his death, he devoted himself to interstellar navigation technology and even collaborated with the local military on everything from energy to warp engines. No one could have imagined that the so-called god-level engineer, Great Master Hingshin, this mad scientist, was actually an alien. He had conducted experiments until he was unable to return to this remote region. Thus, he had no choice but to collaborate with the natives here to develop space technology. There are also 7 super-intelligent robots that came with Grandfather. They are his assistants. They were different from the AI robots that the masses know of. Their intelligence was much higher, and you could directly treat them as another type of human. Little Bear was one of them. The super-intelligent robots would obey, but they would also rebel. After my grandfather passed away, the 6 super-intelligent robots had a disagreement and betrayed him. The Interplanetary Fund suffered great losses, and the development of warp engines came to a halt. Fortunately, we nurtured many talents and were able to support the project despite the lack of professional guidance. Although progress was slow, any progress was a good thing. That was until you discovered the arcade. Of the 7 super-intelligent robots, only Little Bear was left. It was only because the arcade had malfunctioned and could not be contacted that he survived. It was a blessing amidst the misfortune. Because of his return, the new generation of warp engines appeared, ahead of schedule by at least 20 years. Although the 6 super-intelligent robots were gone, their navigation cores were still there. Given the current level of technology, they still couldn't be manufactured. Tomorrow's Empire took advantage of the chaos to snatch one. They hid the core very well, and we had our misgivings. This was also the reason why the Interplanetary Fund didn't touch them. However, after Little Bear returned, it became much easier to find the core. Thus, this time, I snatched it back. Yu Hua spoke calmly, but looking at the situation on the small island, one could tell how intense the main battlefield was. The Interplanetary Fund had joined forces with the military to deal a fatal blow. Even if the terrorist organization, Tomorrow's Empire, wasn't completely wiped out, it would definitely be greatly weakened. At this point, Yu Hua looked at Feng Zhao and said seriously, "Before my grandfather passed away," he said, "we didn't stay here to trample on their home. My grandmother is a local, and my father was also born on this planet. Thus, to us, this is also our home planet." "What about you? Where were you born?" Feng Zhao asked. Planet Een. Planet Een was discovered much earlier than the public knew. Back then, the Interplanetary Fund cooperated with the military to establish a base on Planet Een. I was born there and was taken care of by a nanny robot. When I was 3, I accidentally tore off a cleaning robot's arm. Only then did my grandfather bring me along to personally teach me and announce that I would be the next in charge of the Interplanetary Fund. Feng Zhao. That was a lot of information. Yu Hua's tone was calm. Because he did a genetic test on me and discovered that I was the strongest in the family and could live for the longest. Feng Zhao. Next, we will rebuild the navigation core. When the warp engine reaches a certain level, we will be able to realize true interstellar travel and travel even further. Feng Zhao was very concerned about this. How long will it take to rebuild the core? I'm not sure. Maybe a few decades, maybe a century. Feng Zhao was silent for a moment before smiling. I hope your speed of success can catch up to the speed at which I age. Little Bear was reluctant to leave. Do we have to go back to work now? Yu Hua smiled at him, but didn't say anything. Little Bear looked at Feng Zhao. Big Bro Zhao, are you selling that rabbit? It can light up and give you an early warning. Feng Zhao knew he was talking about the sea slug. Where do you keep it? Of course, of course. I have a huge pond that can be converted into an aquarium. The sea slug's rabbit ears swayed back and forth in the water as if it was greeting Feng Zhao. Feng Zhao carried the water tank over. This is for you. A pair of fair hands took it. Thank you. Little Bear's outstretched hand stopped in midair as he turned to look at Yu Hua. Yu Hua took the water tank with one hand and rubbed Little Bear's head with the other. We should go. Fang Zhao continued, "This sea slug is an artificially created organism after all. The breeders didn't understand its habits. All they know is that it has a strong vitality and is rather toxic. It's best to lock the water tank. It will prison break. You guys have to be careful." Fang Zhao would have to worry all the time about whether it would prison break and run into the ocean, destroying the food chain and ecosystem. He wouldn't have to worry so much if he brought it to Planet Een. Prison break meant death. Little Bear promised, "I will take good care of it. I will send you updates on its status every day." Fang Zhao replied, "That's not necessary. I want it. When the time comes, I will make an intelligent mechanical sea slug for you." Little Bear hugged the autographed photo Fang Zhao had given him and left, turning back every few steps. When the house was out of sight, Little Bear asked Yu Hua, "Fang Zhao values the space project a lot." Yu Hua nodded. "Yes, he also said that he hopes our speed of success can catch up to the speed of his aging." Little Bear sighed. "Humans here start to age after 100 years old. His genes are different from yours, and his lifespan is too short. Also, are we sure we can succeed in 100 years? I'm not even sure how long it will take to crack and reconstruct the core. If the core isn't completed, even if the warp engine is upgraded to 5 generations and the spaceships are built, we won't be able to go far. It's easy to get lost." "He might not have any obvious changes in 100 years, Yu Hua said. "Really? Then how long can he live?" "I don't know. Maybe he can live for another 500 years? Yu Hua chuckled as she spoke. She single-handedly picked up the dawdling Little Bear and carried him onto the flying transport. The Interplanetary Fund personnel had all left. The small island had also been repaired. Even if outsiders came, they wouldn't know that an intense battle had taken place here. As participants of the battle, Nanfeng and the other two had also received gifts from the Interplanetary Fund. The Interplanetary Fund had gifted Nanfeng a new eyeball. He just needed to go to the hospital and activate it. It was an intelligent eyeball with scanning capabilities. Nanfeng chuckled sheepishly as he touched his new eyeball. The Interplanetary Fund had always been at the forefront of technology. However, they mostly cooperated with the military, so high-end products weren't easy to obtain. This was truly a blessing in disguise. Nanfeng was very happy. He wasn't even envious of Yen Biao and Zuiyu's exoskeleton armors. "What exoskeleton? I have curly hair." Chapter 527. From the start of the Outer Space Immigration Program to the approval of the first batch of applicants, there had been no silence in the half-year observation period. Every continent and every corner was in a state of excitement and apprehension. Netizens would start talking about this topic every day when they went online. In order to seize the market, manufacturers had come up with many clever tricks. Celebrity endorsements were indispensable. Even if some manufacturers had already announced that they did not need endorsements, they would still invite celebrities for their online and offline activities to boost their popularity. Gradually, the company that invited the most celebrities, who had a high status and who could invite the top traffic of various industries, would have a strong and powerful brand with a high status. Of course, if they could invite celebrities and experts, it would give the public an even more reliable feeling. Therefore, this half-year could be said to be the highlight of the various continent celebrities. Even some that had already faded from public view welcomed a second spring in their careers. As for Fang Zhao, as the public safety advocate and ambassador of the Outer Space Immigration Program, he had never faded from public view. Although he had not accepted a single commercial event during this period, as long as people took public transportation, watched videos online, or went to entertainment venues, they would know who Fang Zhao was. Even people who were face-blind could recognize his face. The only endorsements Fang Zhao was still active on billboards were for Fiery Bird's headphones and game consoles. As the spokesperson for Fiery Bird's two high-end products, the Diting series of headphones and the 10th generation gaming console, Fang Zhao had also shot a new short commercial, and sales had reached a new peak. Fiery Bird's face was about to burst from laughing. Now, half a year had passed, and the applicants for the outer space immigration program had received their final results. Some were happy, while others were worried. However, for the masses, this was a good thing. It was an event worth remembering. Television stations, major live broadcast platforms, and social media people from every continent had started following up on the immigration program a week before it set sail. On the day of the program's departure, they were fighting for the scoop even if they had to forego food and water. Yenzhou. On the ground floor of a building complex, a young man dragged a suitcase out of an old elevator. At the same time, he was holding a live broadcast tool. Hello everyone, I am host Littlebug. I have already set off. The current host Littlebug was clean and fresh. Even his fingernails had been trimmed to a glossy gloss. His entire body was sparkling. If it wasn't for his old fans, they wouldn't have been able to associate him with the useless otaku from half a year ago, who would always use the phrase lowly. This person had really undergone a 180-degree change. On the day he had received the approval, he had been bawling his eyes out in front of hundreds of thousands of viewers. Littlebug dragged his suitcase out of the dimly lit building. I'm moving. After the approval, I submitted the welfare housing application. It has already been approved. At least I don't have to worry about not having a place to stay or a dormitory. I have also applied for a job. It has been approved. I just have to wait for the interview. I have to go to the community gathering point and then head to the train station with the others before taking a flying transport to Yenzhou spaceport. I heard that Feng Zhao will be heading over today. When we arrive at the spaceport, we will be able to take a photo with him if we draw the lucky lot. Walking on the streets of Black Street, Little Chong raised his head and looked at the narrow, bright blue gap between the towering buildings. For the last time, he used his gaze to trace the outline of the sky above his head. The wind that blew against his face still carried the smell of rust and decay, but his mood was completely different. Little Worm smiled and quickened his pace, dragging the box behind him. He said to the audience in the live streaming room, I see the gathering point. So many cars. In a bit, the first batch of people will be gathering at Yenzhou's airport. We still have to go through the paperwork and verify their identities. I will be very busy later, so I will stop the live broadcast. Everyone can watch the official live broadcast. The entire migration process will be broadcasted. Well then, everyone, see you at home number 2. After turning off the live broadcast, Littlebug went to the assembly point to register and followed the staff to the waiting room. On the TV screen in the waiting room, above the blue dome of heaven was playing. It was already in its second season and many people were watching it. The first season had been pretty good, but after the second season came out, the reviews were even better, especially the music. The number of plays and downloads on various music platforms far exceeded that of the first season. The first season could not be said to be bad. The music was not out of character, but it was very infectious. It left an impression in the short term, but it was not deep and would fade after a month. As for the second season, not to mention the theme and the opening and closing scenes, just some of the music was enough to make people want to search for it and collect it. Littlebug's own playlist was filled with Feng Zhao's works, from old works to those that appeared in the latest season 2. After waiting in the waiting room for a while, Littlebug was arranged to board the car. He could not see the TV screen, but the music continuously flowed into his ears. The strings unfolded like a painting scroll, and the piano was like a spread of distant stars, leaving the lights and traffic behind. In the silent universe, the glassy nebula moved rhythmically. Amidst the resplendent star-like melody, the star-studded percussion gradually became clearer, as if there was an inseparable emotion and persistence. The clouds broke and the fog dispersed. He saw the glory of the past and the light of new life. Sunlight shone in his eyes, and his mood brightened. He was a little shocked and a little touched, and his footsteps became light. Littlebug and the others boarded the departing flying car, and the anxiety in his heart gradually subsided. He looked at the ground and the towering buildings that were gradually getting further away, and he looked at the brighter sky. The feeling of openness is really good. He was not a genius, just an ordinary person, but every time he listened to Feng Zhao's music, he felt that he could become the kind of person he wanted to be. So, I fucking like Feng Zhao the most. Yenzhou Qian City, a certain hotel. Nanfeng, who had the appearance of a mature and steady elite, was discussing the upcoming arrangements with Feng Zhao. He was no longer the steady person he had been in the past to maintain his persona. Now he was real and gave people the feeling that nothing could make him lose his head. He was a high-level talent who would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Nanfeng also felt that he was like that. Many people who were familiar with Nanfeng were very surprised to see this change in Nanfeng. They did not understand how he had changed so much in such a short time. When asked, Nanfeng only smiled casually and jokingly said a few words. In the past, Nanfeng, who was easily flattered by others, was now completely unmoved by the flattery of others. Others felt that he was posturing. Nanfeng did not know whether he was posturing or not. However, there was one thing he was sure of. In this small team, his status was only slightly higher than Yan Biao and Zuiyu. 9 a.m. Yenzhou television station interview. 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. Video conference with the heads of the 12 spaceports publicity departments and online interviews. 2 p.m. follow the Qian City fleet to Yenzhou spaceport. 3:30 p.m. 4 p.m. 5 p.m. depart from the spaceport. Attend the spaceport press conference at 8 p.m. Yenzhou time. The entire process will be broadcast live. Nanfeng went through the remaining work arrangements for the day. Some of them were slightly tweaked from the day before. Boss, you only have 2 hours for lunch and rest today. I will turn away all visitors. You have to make sure you have rest time. It will be very busy, and I still have to change my appearance before leaving in the afternoon. I will be heading out in the afternoon, Feng Zhao said. Nanfeng was stunned, but did not probe further. Then, I will go arrange a car? No need. I will be heading out alone. Look after curly hair. Nanfeng understood that this was Feng Zhao's private matter. He did not wish for anyone else to tag along.
All right.
Feng Zhao was heading out alone in the afternoon. Since curly hair was not bringing him, Nanfeng could only accompany him to play games. After finishing his morning work and lunch, Feng Zhao left the hotel in an inconspicuous car. As he passed by the black street where he had once lived, Feng Zhao stopped at a parking space. The midday sun shone through the crisscrossing facilities above and shone sporadically on the ground of the black street. A group of children were kicking a ball around and looking enviously at the flying cars taking off. My mom said it's our turn to move in the next batch. My dad says so too. Our whole family is moving. I heard that our new home has a large lawn. It won't hurt if you fall. The group of children shrieked excitedly as they discussed the news they had heard. Feng Zhao chuckled and drove off. He arrived at the Yenzhou Cemetery for Martyrs and walked in. The cemetery guards were already familiar with Feng Zhao. They might not necessarily recognize those famous celebrities, but they remembered Feng Zhao very clearly. When they had first seen Feng Zhao here, they had even treated him as a dangerous person. Later on, this person had become more and more popular. Their own music software had saved quite a bit of his music. They had also watched the founding-era Yenzhou chapter that Feng Zhao had acted in. However, what had left the deepest impression was that this person would come here at least once every year. However, at this time, as the ambassador of the Outer Space Immigration Project, this person should be too busy to leave. Not to mention the business invitations, the official media would probably invite this person to participate in some activities. Why had he come to this place? When the entire nation was paying attention to the first batch of Outer Space Immigration Project, this person had actually come to the cemetery for Martyrs. However, it was also because of this special time that there were practically no visitors or people paying their respects in the cemetery. It was empty and very quiet. The routine ID scan and registration records. The guards were curious and asked Feng Zhao, "Why are you here today? Looking for inspiration again?" Feng Zhao smiled and nodded, not saying much. "All right, you musicians are indeed different." Feng Zhao walked past the tombstones one by one until he arrived in front of his own. He brushed off the light dust on the tombstone and sat on the stone steps in front of the tombstone. If every tombstone was a star, that era would also have been filled with shining stars. The melody of despair and hysteria seemed like something that had happened a long, long time ago. Feng Zhao gazed at the azure sky. His gaze seemed to pierce through the atmosphere and gaze at the stars in the distance. The vast starry sky watched over everything in the universe. To them, nothing seemed new. Dynasties changed, prosperity alternated, history changed, and the heavens and earth rose and fell. Those bright and gloomy things came and went in an instant. The rocky planet beneath their feet seemed to be just an insignificant speck of dust in the universe. Only the people who lived on it knew its weight. However, now, people had already flown out from this rocky planet. Time to set sail, Feng Zhao said softly. In the distance, a moving convoy left, and the sound of engines gradually faded. At the outer spaceport, a huge transport ship was docked at the side, about to set sail for an even further flight path. More and more people would forget the scars that had lasted for 100 years. They also wouldn't have to worry about not being able to retreat when the next apocalypse arrived. There might be a day in the future when everyone would forget this vital planet that had nurtured countless people. The scars that had lasted for 100 years would only exist in dust-laden historical records. Perhaps in the distant future, to the people of that time, those 100 years would only be 100 years that could be summed up in one sentence. Perhaps there would still be people who would recall the resplendent stars of that era on a certain night when the stars were dim. However, the era that belonged to us had ultimately passed. What came from the past would also belong to the past. After sitting quietly for a while, Feng Zhao stood up and gazed at the rows of ashen tombstones that filled his field of vision before turning to leave. In a hotel room, Nanfeng was playing video games with curly hair. From time to time, he would glance at the electronic clock and shout in his heart, "Boss, hurry up and come back to change your style." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.